gubernatorial race. We'll keep you posted. I think we have some props to get to.
Yeah, that's right. So we have now a resolution to the North Carolina gubernatorial contest that got so much attention with those bombshell reports about some of Mark Robinson's alleged online behavior. This is the election night watch party for Robinson's supporters here, Austin. So if we see any campaign staffers or Robinson himself take to the podium there, we'll bring this live as well. So that's a live vantage point we have coming to us from North Carolina. We also have a live vantage point coming to us from New Jersey. We're expecting Senator-elect Andy Kim, the Democrat, to address his crowd of supporters here. But to your point, Austin, we got to get in some of these race calls in on these ballot proposals and ballot questions put to voters in several states on a lot of different issues, including and especially, though, in Florida. Remember, the issues of abortion and marijuana were put to voters there in the Sunshine State, and we have some calls to make on that. I want to put this up here. This is Florida Amendment 3, Austin, to legalize marijuana in the state. 91% of estimated votes counted, and this fails. Austin, you see there.
You know, and this is fascinating, Andrew. Every time a statewide measure relating to abortion has been put to the states, every single time, and it looks like our graphic is having some trouble there. We will say that we're not seeing exactly what we believe is happening there with that race. But if this measure were indeed to fail, we'd be talking about the first statewide abortion measure that would be shut down, and that would be notable. Every single time that this thing has been put to a state, the pro-abortion side has won out. Of course, the overturn of Roe is what returned the power of these types of decisions to each individual state. We will, of course, work to get that graphic updated. I think we had some other propositions to get to as well, Andrew.
Yes, Austin, of course, we're tracking Florida Amendment 4. Like you said, that's the abortion referendum there. But both, according to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, both of these ballot questions have failed there in the state of Florida. Austin, you noted the higher than usual threshold that was needed for these to pass here. Well, our colleague Christina Evans, she's tracking some of the reaction to the failure of some of these proposals on social media. Christina, what are they saying?
Absolutely, Andrew. You pointed it out. Yes, the Florida Governor, Ron DeSantis, was one of the first people to come out and say that both of these amendments had failed when we're talking about marijuana and abortion as well. Taking a look here inside of our social studio, I want to pull up for you some of the tweets that we have been monitoring right now. Here's a look at that tweet from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He says, with the polls now closed in Florida, Amendment 3 has failed. Amendment 4 has failed as well. Again, one of the first people that we saw call this, but again, an additional reaction is coming in from the state. Take a look at this tweet there from Florida Representative DeSantis. He says spent tens of millions of taxpayer money against abortion rights and legalizing marijuana. This criminal and abuse of state dollars must be investigated by the Department of Justice immediately. So of course that is again Representative Maxwell Alejandro Frost there in the state, upset at the way that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis went about going on a blitz to make sure that these amendments did not pass in the days before the election. Here's also some results as well that we're getting from an NFL legend here, Tony Dungy. The polls are now closed in Florida, and Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 both failed to pass. Thank you to all the Florida residents who helped to protect the lives of the unborn, and we want to help people to realize that those expectant mothers who need help will still be able to get it. So just some of the reaction that we're now seeing come in on social media in response to these amendments failing. Again, with the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, one of the first people to speak out on social about this amendment failing. Andrew.
All right, Christina, thanks so much. Those were definitely key to watch there in Florida. We'll check in very, very soon. We are in a new hour. It's a little past 7 o'clock here Mountain Time, 9 o'clock there on the East Coast. Let's go to New Jersey right now. Congressman, the Democrat Andy Kim, giving a victory speech there in New Jersey, winning his Senate race. Let's watch.
I know that many of you took risks to join this campaign. You had people doubt your choice to join this campaign. You worked long hours and struggled and stressed about the challenges we confronted. I hope you take pride in this moment. Whoever says young people don't care about politics haven't met the young people that are the engine powering campaigns all over this nation. And to our supporters, look what we've accomplished. Look what we've been able to do. By most standards of what is possible, this moment right now should not be occurring. A year ago, 6 years ago, few believed we could show that what we could accomplish. That we showed that politics isn't some exclusive club just for the well-off and the well-connected. Right. That we built something that epitomizes the grassroots. I hope this experience has brought you closer to understanding the essence of our democracy, that you have a deeper understanding of what it means to be a citizen of this great country, and that you feel empowered by that. You've heard me say this line a lot, and I'll say it again tonight, that I believe that the opposite of democracy is apathy. And by extension, I hope that you've seen our campaign as a means of being the opposite of that helplessness. Yes. I hope this moment is every bit as meaningful for you as it is for me. I want to say thank you to my family. My parents and my sister are here, who gave me the grounding in service and purpose that powers me every day. To my wife, Cammie. Cammie, look what we've accomplished. Look what we've done. For them, right?
Yep.
I'm just so proud of our family and what we've been able to do, our humble family. Be able to take this kind of actions. To my boys. I'm proud of the two of you. You know, I know that this has been tough. I know it hasn't been easy. And I know there have been moments where I haven't always been there for you in the way that I wished I was as a father. But I hope you're proud of me. And I hope that when you learn about this moment in America, that you come to understand why I did what I did and why I fight for you. That's what this is about. I chose this hotel for a particular reason. 37 years ago, when I was 5 years old, my family and I lived out of this hotel for several weeks when we first moved to New Jersey. My first nights in this state were right here in this hotel. My dad had just accepted a job, his very first job ever, working at a lab in Camden to do cancer research. And we were looking for a home for us to rent. My very first nights, as I said, were here, and some of the strongest memories I have ever had in my life, early moments of my life, were here. I remember staying here. I remember there was a restaurant here. I think it was called Circles. I can't remember, but I just remember feeling like the food was amazing. I was like, people in New Jersey live good here. Quality of the food, high class. I felt like a prince. And I just have to say, I wanted to be here tonight, in this hotel. I wanted to pay tribute to my parents, to my family, to the state, for giving a kid like me a chance to be able to dream, for giving me the tools through public education and a kind community. Yeah. It wasn't easy initially. We had no family to lean on here, no friends to help us get started, but New Jersey welcomed us. I wanted to return here tonight to give perspective. For my parents, this hotel was an important step in achieving the American dream and ultimately giving back to this state. My parents taught me something I'll never forget. They taught me to love America. I revere this country. I am in awe of America. When I worked at the White House, I've shared this story before, when I worked at the White House, I had a pair of black, pristine leather shoes that I would only wear whenever I was asked to go into the Oval Office. I wanted to treat that room different. I wanted to remind myself that I'm part of something bigger than all of us. And it's because of my reverence for this nation that it also pains me to our core to see the struggles that we are going through. That we aren't just having policy debates and fights, but instead the very foundation of our democracy is rendered fragile. People tell me they simply didn't trust their public servants. They simply didn't trust that the politics was working for them. That they didn't think that the big challenges we face in our family and as a state are solvable because they thought nobody was looking out for them. While we know what happened in our race, I certainly recognize right now that we are at a moment of profound anxiety about what comes next for our country. Yep. That the coming minutes and hours and days could very well be excruciating. But regardless of what happens next, we need to recognize that we face significant challenge regardless of the outcome. That the divisions we face are deep to the bone. They will not be fixed by any single election, and it isn't just about the politics. We live in a time of the greatest amount of inequality in our nation's history, too. In Salem, I visited a public housing complex and talked to a mother who showed me the black mold growing on her home, on the walls where her kids live. She told me about her pleas for help that did not go answered. I heard from a young man who felt so pessimistic about his life. He said to me that he didn't think that he could ever afford to buy a home in this state because of the high costs as well as the high student loan burden that he was facing. Regardless of what the final results are from this election, our nation is on an unsustainable trajectory. But let there be no doubt that this is a...
All right, so you've been listening to now New Jersey's new Democratic Senator-elect Andy Kim there, giving his victory speech, besting his Republican rival Curtis Bashaw there. This is, remember, Bob Menendez's seat that he vacated after resigning his Senate seat there. All right, I'm Andrew Kraft. We are in a new hour. We want to get in more of these presidential race calls, especially here, and we have a lot of them to make now that we are 10 minutes removed from this new hour, and let's take them here. So going now there to Wyoming, Wyoming's 3 electoral votes. Going to Donald Trump there, you can see with only around 2% of estimated votes counted, Trump besting Harris there right now, at least. There 3-1. So wanted to make sure we got that in. All right, Louisiana here, 8 electoral votes. Louisiana being called for former President Donald Trump over Vice President Harris. Trump getting 8 electoral votes out of Louisiana. Louisiana staying in the red column here. Also, we do have more of these election results coming into the South Dakota here. 3 electoral votes going to Donald Trump here. This race just being called within the last couple of minutes here. We also have more, another Dakota here. We have a North Dakota race called there. So both Dakotas going into the Republican column for Donald Trump there. 3 electoral votes for Trump in North Dakota. Harris, of course, coming up short in this predominantly red state there in North Dakota. So moving on to Nebraska. Okay, Nebraska District 1. Nebraska is somewhat of an interesting, peculiar state in the way they count their electoral votes. It's not a winner-take-all state there. Harris up on Trump with around 31% of estimated votes counted, 57-42 there. And Austin Westfall joining me here in the Live Now newsroom as well, commenting, responding to some of these race calls and results coming in. We have Nebraska District 2. This is Omaha. That's that congressional district here. 1 electoral vote there is up for grabs. And Harris over Trump 61-38 there with 46% of estimated votes counted. Also Nebraska District 3, Trump over Harris. This is like the rest of Nebraska, central and western Nebraska here. And you see there 10% of estimated votes counted. Trump up on Harris, almost 2-1 there. So wanted to get in some of these numbers. Now, all of Nebraska has 5 electoral votes. Austin, let's talk about Nebraska here. Why does it all have 5 votes there?
Yeah, it's a little deceptive, Andrew. Basically, what we're talking about here is 2 of the electoral votes out of those 5 go for the entirety of the state's popular vote. That's how they determine 2 of those votes. The other 3 votes are split between the 3 congressional districts in Nebraska. Each one gets 1 electoral vote. The second one specifically is going to be part of Kamala Harris's easiest path to the presidency. If she gets that 1 electoral vote in Nebraska District 2, as well as the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that would give her the presidency, as long as all of the 43 other non-battleground states and D.C. fall the way that they expect them to fall. You just gave us a lot of data. Here's what that means for our Electoral College tally. Right now, Harris is at 99, Trump at 177. Here is how the map is filling in. You see a lot of these states that we expected to go red, they're being called as soon as the polls are closing, because the Associated Press knows that these are going to be reliably red. They're going to be dominated, really, by Republican voters. We see Texas going red, Oklahoma, Georgia, and let me just say that none of the battleground states have been called so far. Let's talk about Nebraska, because Nebraska is interesting. It's these little tiny dots here off to the corner. You see Nebraska has District 1, 2, and 3. Maine has a similar dynamic where their electoral votes, 2 of them go to the state at large, and then both of their congressional districts each get 1 congressional vote each. So those 2 states, they operate a little bit differently than the rest of them. Ohio going red, and let's zoom in here, because Ohio's interesting, Andrew. I mean, we've been following elections, and Ohio used to be that prototypical swing state. Not anymore. Look at the results. The AP, with just over 50% of the vote tallied, says that Trump's going to take this state with about a 9-point lead. That's just with over 50% of the vote counted. Ohio's interesting, not so much because of the presidency. We expected it to go that way. Let's switch over to our Senate map here, and let's look at how Sherrod Brown and Bernie Moreno's race is going. So this is fascinating, because Moreno does have the edge over the incumbent Democrat, Sherrod Brown, right now. But you see the difference. There's a lot less room between these 2 candidates than there was between Harris and Trump. Trump had a much more commanding lead at this point compared to Moreno over Sherrod Brown. This is one of those Senate seats that will decide the balance of power in the upper chamber of the House. You see there that over 1.5 million votes have been cast for Bernie Moreno, just under 1.5 million votes so far have been cast for Sherrod Brown. As I've been mentioning, both parties have been sweating this race out. A lot of money has been pouring into this race. I'm curious to see if this is the last true example of Ohio being a battleground. It certainly looks like this race is a tight one, Andrew.
Yeah, that's right. So many resources put into the Senate race there in Ohio by Republicans and Democrats alike. And to your point, yes, Ohio has been called for Donald Trump. So we just brought you a lot of race calls for Trump. We do have a race call as well, though, in a solidly blue state. That's the Empire State as well. For Harris, let's take a look at this. Harris getting New York's 28 electoral votes there. The Associated Press calling New York for Harris. So we do want to bring into the conversation as well Tom LoBianco at 24 Site. Tom, bear with us here. We have a lot of live events going on right now. Let's stay in New York right now. Democratic Senator out of New York, Kirsten Gillibrand. She's speaking there at her watch party. Let's listen.
With our Cyber Academy, so kids can actually go to college free in exchange for public service as our cyber defenders. That will help us keep our country safer. So we have a lot of work to do, but one of the issues that I think people in New York feel most passionate about is guaranteeing women equality in this country. Making sure that we have our civil liberties and civil rights, making sure that we get to make those life and death decisions over our bodies when we're having children, under what circumstances. We have to guarantee an Equal Rights Amendment in New York State. I hope everybody will vote yes on Prop 1. Get the ERA added to our U.S. Constitution as well. So, other things that I hope we can work on in this next this Congress, we need a national paid leave policy. We need to make sure that families don't have to make these tough decisions about caring for a child or a loved one and bringing home a paycheck. We have to make sure we keep supporting our workers, strengthening our abilities to join unions, to collectively bargain for wages and benefits. Yeah. We have to expand access to health care and keep bringing down the cost of medicine. And last but not least, I will fight against the politics of hate and division in this country. No student should feel unsafe being on a college campus because of anti-Semitism. Any kind of bigotry of any kind. We have to, as a nation, figure out who we are. We are a country that used to love one another, that used to care about our neighbors, that treated others the way we wanted to be treated. We have to focus on all that is noble, all that is right, all that is pure and admirable, and we have to lift that up into our national dialogue. Now, I know you're thinking that's a lot of things to get done, but we are going to have a Congress to pass this agenda. Because of the work the governor has done, because of the work that Hakeem Jeffries and I have done, we are going to have a majority in the U.S. Congress, and we are going to elect our new speaker as Hakeem Jeffries. Now, this coordinated campaign that the governor and I, Hakeem, worked on is extraordinary. We were able to work with Chairman Jacobs to build the greatest turnout machine that has ever been seen in New York State, and I'd argue anywhere in the country. We have 40 offices across these battleground districts, 23,000 volunteers, 150 staff. We've knocked on 1.3 million doors, and we have made over 5 million phone calls to voters. So I'm going to tell you tonight, we are going to see victories up and down the Hudson Valley, all across Long Island, in Syracuse. We are going to flip the House of Representatives right here in New York State.
All right, Senator Gillibrand there at her victory watch party. You want to put up the results there for Gillibrand. Quite an easy go at it against a Republican challenger there. This wasn't necessarily one of those competitive races. But also, we just brought you the news, Harris getting all 28 of New York State's electoral college tally there, electoral votes rather. And so in the meantime, though, we do have yet another state call. Let's move from New York now to Texas, and the Associated Press is calling Texas for former President Donald Trump. So Trump getting Texas's 40 electoral votes there. This is with 58% of estimated votes counted. And I'm bringing into the conversation Austin Westfall yet again here. So Austin, right now, Texas going to Trump. Kind of knew that. New York going for Harris. Definitely knew that here. I think right now, and we want to bring in Tom LoBianco, because I think all eyes right now are on this Ohio Senate race, aren't they?
Yeah, all eyes are on the Senate race. And real quick here, just because we mentioned them, no, New York, Texas are not surprising, but nonetheless, they both carry a lot of electoral votes. So now that we see that New York is officially in Kamala's bin, she's at 99. Texas, Trump is at 177. I'm interested to see how this Senate race in Texas plays out as more results come in. I'm also interested, as you said, Andrew, in the Ohio Senate race. And Tom, I'll start with you here. What are the stakes of the Ohio Senate race? So far, we've seen that Trump has a sizable lead over Harris in Ohio, but we don't see that Moreno has the same sizable lead. He has a lead, but not that same sizable lead that Trump had. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, it definitely looks like the Senate is going to be a Republican at the end of all this. That's the one thing you think we'll feel pretty confident about with some of these early race calls. So, you know, that's really important. But, you know, how Republican then? You know, if Sherrod Brown's able to hold on, then, you know, then that probably hurts the control there. But, you know, this is really interesting, this cycle. The split ticket voting. You know, we talked about that before. We're starting to see this in play, especially working class voters, working class men. And that's a really big dynamic this cycle.
Yeah, and just to set the stage here, Tom Loyanko with 24-Site is going to be with us throughout the hour, kind of popping in, reacting in real time to some of these results. Though we do have some live events going on right now. I want to go out to North Carolina. Josh Stein there, the Democratic Attorney General, just won the governor's race over Lieutenant Governor Republican Mark Robinson. He's at his election night victory party here. Let's listen.
When we go together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as independents, but as North Carolinians. And I know we can do this because I know who we are. I have met so many inspiring people across this state. Debbie and Cornelius, who tragically lost her son to fentanyl and is fighting to protect other families from that same fate. Lauren, a teacher in Greenville, who digs into her own pocket to buy school supplies for her students to give them a better chance. I want to thank everyone I have met along the way for sharing your stories with me.
Love you, Josh.
And to the thousands and thousands of people from every corner of this state who helped to build this campaign, I am forever grateful for your support. Thank you for believing in the promise of North Carolina. And if I didn't earn your vote in this election, I hope to earn your trust by working hard for you as your governor. I pledge to listen and work across party lines to do what's right for North Carolina because no person or party has a monopoly on good ideas. To all of the smart and smart aleck young people on my campaign, thank you for the long days and late nights. Thank you for the hard and high quality work, and thank you for the laughter along the way. They, by the way, are incredible. I also want to thank Governor Cooper. Let's give that man the hand that he deserves. Roy Cooper has led our state with a steady hand through an unprecedented global pandemic, a 1,000-year storm in the West, and 2 500-year floods in the East. He expanded Medicaid, strengthened our business climate, and fought for our public schools. Roy, I could not be more grateful for your service and your friendship, and do not even think about changing your cell phone number on me. My parents, Adam and Jane, raised my brother Eric and my sister Gerda to try to do what is right just like they did. It's truly one of the best gifts that parents can give to their children. I want to thank them, and I hate that my dad got a bug yesterday working early voting, and so they're watching it here on TV. Let's all say thank you, Adam and Jane. To my wife, Anna. Otherwise known as a rock star. Thank you for being the glue that keeps our family together, for keeping me focused on the things that really matter, and for being you. She is going to be a remarkable First Lady. We are blessed to have our 3 kids here today. Sam, Adam and Leah. Mom and I love you very much and are incredibly proud of you. Fundamentally, this campaign is about you and all of the young people of North Carolina. We want all of you to want to call North Carolina home the same way we do. Friends, we are so blessed to be of this place. And while nowhere is perfect, I firmly believe that whatever may be wrong with our state can be repaired by all that is right. After all, North Carolina is where the Greensboro Four sat down and the Wright brothers took flight. It's where my father joined Julius Chambers and James Ferguson to form North Carolina's first integrated law firm to fight for equality and opportunity for all. It's where people come together to solve tough problems and believe that our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. This is our North Carolina. This is our home. Tonight, let's celebrate this hard-fought victory, and tomorrow we will get back to work to building a North Carolina that is safer, stronger, and more prosperous for everyone. Thank you, and may God bless you, and may God bless the state of North Carolina. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. North Carolina Governor-elect Josh Stein at his victory party there, thanking his family, thanking his supporters. Of course, the incumbent governor right now, Roy Cooper, term limited there. So this stays in Democratic hands. So Stein there besting the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson there. And you can see right now the race is called by the AP, but there is right now a 15-point margin there. And this was to be expected. You see it there on your screen as well. All right, I'm Andrew Kraft. We are at the bottom of the hour. Let's step away. Let's step out of North Carolina. Let's take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be giving you the latest updates. We'll get an electoral college vote tally. Also, we'll be tracking some of the results coming in key Senate races in Ohio and Texas as well. A lot more on this election night in 2 minutes. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us here on this election night. I want to bring into the conversation my colleague Austin Westfall here in the Live Now newsroom, and 24 Sites, Tom LoBianco. We all are here tracking all of this, and we have a lot to get to. Let's first start off right now. Where does the Electoral College stand at 9:30 Eastern, Austin?
Right now, the Electoral College And let's get over to this because we are starting to see Trump 178 here, and we'll make sure that we've got the map up because Trump is getting, right now, he is just under 100 points away from that magic number 270. Harris with 99. There are still a lot of big Democratic states that are yet to be called. California, Oregon, Washington, those are going to be some of the bigger states that are going to put some more votes on the Harris side. Nonetheless, we're, of course, tracking all the battleground states, that being Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Georgia. We have no results yet out of the two western battleground states, Arizona and Nevada. But as you can see so far right now, as we look at Wisconsin, at least where it stands, with 12% of the votes counted, it looks like this battleground state, Trump has a 4-point lead so far. That state leaning red at this early hour. Michigan, let's look at that. 12% of the votes counted. Right now, Harris has about an 8% lead in Michigan. Pennsylvania, what many consider to be, it's an easy argument to be made, that this is the most crucial battleground state of them all. Just over a quarter of the votes have been tallied so far, and right now Harris has an 11-point lead over Donald Trump. We'll see if more Republican votes file in as the night progresses. Of course, every single poll has indicated that that is as tight as can be. Moving down to some of these southern states, let's focus on North Carolina. 58% of the vote being tallied so far, and right now Trump has about a 4-point lead. That's looking more like a 3-point lead for Trump in the Tar Heel state. The final one I'll get to here is Georgia. Andrew, 75% of the vote tallied. 3/4 of the vote is in the Peach State. Trump has a 5.4% lead. That's where we're at right now.
All right, Austin, thanks so much. Tom, with whatever Austin just said there, kind of giving the roundup of the battleground states, can we glean anything from them, from the results coming in right now?
Yeah, super helpful there. Look, the numbers that we are seeing right now from Georgia and North Carolina really seem to show him running away with it down in the Sun Belt, okay, especially in Georgia, all right? Now, this is very tentative, but some of the early exit polls we have seen have shown Trump a lot more men voters showing up and supporting Trump, all right? And that's a really big dynamic. We've talked a lot about women voters with Harris, all right? But up in the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, all right, Pennsylvania, especially in Wisconsin and Michigan, we're still not too many returns yet. I think I saw like 9% returns, something like that, up in Wisconsin. So it's going to be a little while before we see what's happening up in the Rust Belt, Blue Wall. But down in the Sun Belt, especially in Georgia, it's looking really good for Trump right now.
All right, we do have live pictures there inside the Trump-Vance election night watch party. We also have live pictures outside there at the Harris-Walz election night watch party as well there on the campus of Howard University in Washington. Tom, let's talk, though, now about some of these key Senate races that we're getting the results in. Let's focus our efforts first there in Ohio between the Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown and his Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. And we were talking before the break, Austin, you and I, about the Senate map and the Senate makeup here. This is where it stands between Moreno and Brown. What can we glean from this?
Yeah, and I'll just do a quick run through here because there was a number, and if you can come out to the map here, I want to show off a little bit of what we're working with here. So you'll see an odd color, that's yellow, that's because, and Vermont and Maine both leaning for their independent incumbents in both of those cases. Senator King and Senator Sanders expected to win in Vermont and Maine. That's why you see yellow. As far as battleground states go in the Senate, there are toss-up races, at least what have been considered to be toss-up races before the election, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. We've been eyeballing Nebraska to see if the independent challenger there could make some noise. It appears so far that state is leaning red. So Montana, that's going to be an interesting to glean from once we start getting results in. But Tom, and this is something that we're going to be focusing on a lot, is Ohio. Many thought that the three-term incumbent senator there, Sherrod Brown, he has been elected in favorable Democratic years. I believe the first time he was elected was in light of the war that was back in 2006. That was a favorable year for Democrats. 6 years later, that was an Obama year. That was another favorable year for Democrats. The last time he was up for election was in the midterm after Trump was elected. There was a blue wave there. Is this the toughest challenge yet and the most polarizing race we've seen Sherrod Brown participate in so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I was talking with one of my longtime Republican sources about this a couple days ago, and we're going to know a lot after we see all the tallies. But the Democrats still have a problem up in the Rust Belt with working class voters. Okay. And, big questions on what happens with the presidential. But Sherrod Brown always was one of the, more populist Democrats and was able to outpace national Democrats in Ohio. That might be changing. Okay? That's really important to watch. And if that is, I think that's a leading indicator of a bigger problem for Democrats right now. But again,
Tom, just want to chime in here. We are getting a race call because we're talking about Senate races, Tom. This is a Senate race in Maryland. This was an open seat here. Angela Alsobrooks, the Democrat, beating former Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, there in this Senate seat. It's being vacated by retiring Democrat Ben Cardin there. So this seat stays in Democratic hands here. Tom, Austin, let's comment on this. A lot of Republicans, and you and I have talked about this race, Tom, had thought this could be a pickup, that Hogan would somehow materialize a victory. That's not the case here tonight. 55-43 with a little over half of estimated votes counted here. This was also Brooks to lose. She has not done that. The AP calling the race for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I remember years ago when then Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele ran against Ben Cardin. All right. And there was a lot of talk that he might be the Republican to do it, especially because he was the first elected black statewide politician in Maryland. Okay, he ended up losing by a pretty similar margin to that. Now we don't know because we've only seen about 55% or so right now. But if that divide holds up, it just really goes to show for Maryland. I mean, Hogan was an incredibly popular governor of Maryland and did a lot to break away from Trump, which is what you need to do in traditionally blue Maryland. Maybe you just can't win statewide, or at least in these Senate races.
Yeah.
So, Tom, talk to us, because there are several examples around the country, correct, of some of these competitive races where the candidates have had to move more to the center in order to win votes in these battleground states. Can you talk about some of the notable ones?
Well,
I mean,
we used
Larry
to say
Hogan
4 years ago, or 50 years ago, all politics is local. I think it's all politics is national now. I'm not sure that you can break away from this stuff. I remember I was up at the state fair in Maryland not too long ago, and you had the Larry Hogan signs next to the Donald Trump signs at the Maryland Republican Party booth, and you could tell he didn't want anything to do with it. All politics is really national now. It's changed so much from the way it used to be.
All right, we do have some more of these results coming in. We want to stay, though, on the Senate races. Let's focus our efforts on Texas right now. We just got this live picture up there. This is in Texas at the Colin Allred election night watch party here. Let's put up that race right now. This is quite a sizable lead Cruz has over Allred at the moment. 64% of estimated votes counted. Democrats were somewhat bullish here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, were Republicans worried about how Ted Cruz would do? The race hasn't been called yet, but we see the vote spread here.
Well, my Republican sources were never really worried about the Cruz race. I think you heard more from Democratic sources that, they might be able to, ride a wave of support from women in this election and, maybe potentially get Allred up over the top. Cruz historically has been fairly unpopular, as statewide go for Texas, but that doesn't seem to be the case right so far. But again, we still got 1/3 of the vote still to come in. That could change, but as these race calls go, it becomes harder later in when you have more of the precincts reporting. It becomes a lot harder for these candidates to overtake a gap of that size. So it looks like Cruz is in pretty good position right now.
Even though Texas is a deep red state, is there anything to learn from some of the counties within a deep red state like that?
Well, it's, we've been talking about this as the gender election. And, boy, you talk about, groups of voters that are not a monolith. Men and women are not monolithic. They do not vote uniformly. Okay. I think we really got to look at and especially as the exit polls come back more, and we match that up with the actual vote tallies. I think we're going to have to look at some of the key dynamics of what people are talking about, what concerns them. Abortion is not the only animating issue for women. I heard a lot about the economy, too. And Trump seems to do better on the economy with women. But that's also not always the case, because Harris had been cutting into that. So it's elections are always wild. There's always surprises on election night.
Tom, while we have you, though, let's focus our efforts on one more key Senate race we're watching. Let's go to Wisconsin now, between Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin and her Republican challenger, Eric Hovde there. This is only with around 22% of estimated votes counted. Baldwin up over Hovde, not by much, though. How much trouble is Tammy Baldwin in? Should Democrats be worried?
Could be. This is, okay, so we were talking earlier about split ticket voting. This is one of the strangest things I've seen this election. Tammy Baldwin had put out some mailers or advertisements where the Democrats was talking about supporting Trump trade policies back when he was in office. I mean, the political bedfellows this cycle are some of the strangest I've ever seen. Now, she could be in good shape. One of the things, over on the 24 Site podcast, the Ground Game podcast I run out of 24 Site with my friend Patrick Finkston, we had on Charlie Sykes a little while ago, and he was talking about how Republicans used to have a very good ground operation in Wisconsin. Scott Walker, Wrights Priebus, back in the day, about a decade ago. Democrats have usurped that and have done a lot better under Ben Wickler, Democratic Party chair in Wisconsin. Ground games, turnout, operations, those things matter, especially in tight races like this. So, it's not unforeseeable that she wins and Trump wins too in Wisconsin. That's not out of the realm of possibility here.
Let's back up here. Let's go back to Political Science 101 for a minute, Tom. Explain to us why we're talking so much about the balance of power in the Senate and the House. How does that dictate how powerful of a president we're going to be working with?
Well, I'll tell you, you hear voters complain a lot about how Washington doesn't get anything done and need to return to normal order. It is incredibly hard to pass legislation through Congress and get it to any president's desk these days. And certainly a lot of that has to do with the Senate. You'd need to be able to break a filibuster. And, with the exception of the courts, it's 60 votes. And, neither side, the traditionalists in the Senate, have wanted to touch that. Okay? So in a strong sense, no matter if you get a Harris presidency or a Trump presidency again, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to move things. Now, where that comes into play is those nominations, and whether you're able to get actually confirmed, the judges, but also the secretaries, the cabinet. If you're able to get them confirmed, that gives them more power, and that's really important here. And the Senate Republicans could be. I mean, they look to be in a very strong position right now. And if this goes as it looks, it might go with John Thune potentially becoming the Senate Majority Leader. And again, a lot of things still yet to play out within the Senate Republican Conference. That would give Senate Republicans and Senator John Thune out of South Dakota a lot of power.
Yeah, Tom, speaking of who would be in charge of Senate Republicans, who would be the leader there, we aired Rick Scott's victory speech last hour, and almost in the same breath, he moved on to yet another race he's waging. And that is for Republican leader in the Senate. He's thrown his hat into the ring. He's been very critical of current leader McConnell. McConnell stepping back, but will remain in the Senate here. So I believe those elections take place internally for Republicans on the House and Senate side, November 13th. We won't put the cart before the horse here. We'll focus on today's election. But I just want to get your sense here. Let's focus on the Harris-Trump campaigns right now. And Tom, you got a lot of sources within the Trump campaign. That's their election night watch party. We have this, what we call a switched feed here. We're seeing a lot of folks there with red MAGA hats. I also just saw one of these Jewish Trump voters as well. You see there people taking selfies. So, you know, you can get a sense of the vibes. You can't really glean anything results-wise from how the parties are doing. Maybe a little bit later on you can. But what do you see when you look at this shot we have inside Trump HQ?
Well, you know, this campaign, and we've talked about this extensively throughout the election, is, you know, as Trump campaigns go, has been remarkably disciplined. And you got to give credit to Susie Wiles there and Chris LaCivita and Tony Fabrizio, kind of that trio at the top of this operation. All right. But there have been a lot of concerns. I mean, look, when the Iowa poll came out, Ann Selzer showing a lot of problem with women voters in Iowa for Trump. You know, you started seeing that reflected by Trump himself on stage at these rallies. All right, whether it's performative on purpose or whether he's just getting tired and, you know, worn out, whatever the reason, he's very transparent in his emotions and how he's feeling about things. We've always known that about him. So I don't know. Look, the early results that we're seeing, again, go back to the Sun Belt, especially Georgia and North Carolina, doing incredibly well there. And if these exit polls turn out to be correct, with a larger number of men breaking for Trump, especially with minorities, Black and Latino voters, that gives a lot of confidence. All right, and you can see that reflected in the crowd. But there's still a lot of concerns with the number with women breaking hard for Harris. All right, in the last couple of days of the race. So still a lot to be determined here.
Yeah,
it's still,
Tom,
this is early.
It is early, Tom. I mean, I keep reiterating that point. We have a live picture, though, at Harris's election night watch party there on the campus of Howard University. Of course, she's an alum there. So let's talk about how the Harris campaign might be feeling. I've been citing this all day today, Tom. Senior advisor to the Harris campaign, David Plouffe, was on CNN last night at this time with Aaron Burnett. He says the campaign, they believe they can win all 7 battleground states. Now, is that what some political pollsters and pundits call hopium or not here? What does that mean?
No. I just, based on what we're seeing so far tonight, that looks incredibly unlikely to happen. Okay. And, you know, that's standard for any campaign, you know, top of the campaign. They're always going to say that. But look, you know, we saw some of the early exits from NBC News. There was a lot of talk a couple days ago about the Madison Square Garden rally and the Puerto Rico comments really damaging Trump with Latinos and Puerto Ricans. Okay. That does not seem to have translated among the electorate, especially among Latino, the men, all right, and 3rd and 4th generation younger Latinos, all right. So, if that is the case, it's going to be a lot harder for her. Especially, you can't even talk about places like Arizona at that point. Nevada could be a little bit different. All right, Nevada's it's its own unique beast, but in Arizona, you know, if that trend stays true, you can pretty much write off Arizona for Harris. And, you know, again, and then it becomes an issue in Pennsylvania. All right, you got to look at Allentown, the Lehigh Valley. All right, you got to watch the returns coming out of there. That was the big concern. All right, Pennsylvania is really a must-win for Harris. Okay, it's not as much of a must-win for Trump, but for Harris, it looked like she needs that blue wall to hold.
Sure.
Before we go, Tom, I got to ask you about Puerto Ricans, because there's an interesting statistic coming out of Osceola County. This is just south of Orlando. Right now, Trump, with 95% of the votes counted, Trump has 50%, Harris 48%. So Trump's up by 2 points. If I'm looking back 4 years ago, Biden won Osceola County by 14 points. So we're seeing a sizable shift. This county is important because I believe around 1/3 of the population there are Puerto Ricans. What do you make of Trump seeming to gain some ground in a county like this?
Yeah. You know, one of the big things, and this is really important, we had Mike Madrid on the Ground Game podcast recently, and he specializes in Latino voters. Look at the way Trump talks about immigration, the wall, wanting to crack down on immigration. Especially, of course, now we should note here, of course, that Puerto Ricans are Americans, all right? But culturally, the problem was Tony Hinchcliffe dumping on the entire culture. It was very racist. Trump, if you listen to him, he talks a lot about illegal immigration. And among Latino voters, especially people who have been here 3 and 4 generations deep now, all right, they agree with that. And you start to see that movement among the younger Latinos towards Trump. And that's really key in understanding this dynamic. You also got to remember, too, especially for Latinos, large South American population, Colombian, Venezuelans, Cubans are getting older now, or the expats down in Florida, very traditionally conservative, socially conservative. And you got a lot of that down in South Florida, okay? So when we talk about voter groups, no group is a monolith. And sometimes Democrats seem to forget that.
All right, Tom LoBianco with 24-Sight. Tom, can't thank you enough. This entire year, you've been so instrumental.
Thank you, guys.
Austin, thank you, too. We're going to take our final commercial break of this hour. More results where that came from. We're also going out live to the Trump-Vance watch party in West Palm Beach. Some of our reporters standing by. We'll see you in 2 minutes. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us here as we approach yet the top of a new hour. In the meantime, like I said before the break, let's go out now live to West Palm Beach, Florida, to the Trump-Vance election night watch party. That's where we find Fox News' Rebecca Castor with the latest there. Rebecca, good to see you here. How's the energy there in the room?
Hey, Andrew. Well, of course, with this being filled with Trump supporters, they are excited and encouraged. The Trump campaign advisors, they tell us that they feel they're on track for a good night. They're encouraged by some of this exit polling that is coming in. The supporters here, they cheer every time a state is called for the former president. Trump, though, is watching this all go down from Mar-a-Lago, where he's watching the returns come in with family and friends. Former President Trump is spending election night where he kicked off his campaign in Palm Beach, alongside one of his biggest supporters, Elon Musk. And his team is feeling confident they can secure the magic number of 270 electoral votes.
For early voting, it was definitely, we didn't have as much mail turnout, and that's not just for our party, that's for any party in terms of voting. But after today, we're seeing a change, and we're seeing such optimism.
Millions of voters braved long lines to cast their ballots, each with different issues in mind.
Under a new Trump administration, I think we're going to have more secure borders.
We have everything going for us, but we're going to lose a lot of that if Trump wins.
But with the race neck and neck, it could be days before we know the final results. During a visit to thank his campaign staff, the former president expressed his frustration with the vote counting process.
They should do paper ballots, same-day voting, voter ID, and be done. One day, same day. And you'd have by 10 o'clock.
No matter the outcome, the winner of this election will have a challenging task on the first day of their administration.
One of the most important jobs of whoever the president-elect is going to be has got to be unifying the country.
Donald Trump was asked earlier today if he'll accept the results of this election if he loses. He said, if it's, quote, a fair election, I'll be the first to acknowledge it. Andrew, back to you.
So, Rebecca, I had a question because, remember, a lot of reporters have been asking Trump whether or not he would be voting in favor of Amendment Question 3 and 4 on marijuana and abortion in Florida. We haven't really gotten a sense of how he voted on that, though we do know those questions failed there in Florida.
Yes, so we didn't really get a clear answer from Trump on how he voted on those measures, but as you said, really not a big deal. They failed today.
All right, Rebecca Castro there live for us in West Palm Beach. Rebecca, talk soon. Thanks so much. All right, in the meantime here, we do have yet another race call that we have to make. The Associated Press calling Missouri for Donald Trump here. Let's take that. You see there 30% of estimated votes counted right now, though this was enough to call the race for Trump there in the Show Me State. There you can see the vote margin. So in the meantime, we do want to bring it into the conversation as well. Remember, we're checking in on some of the trends going on social media as well, because we are about 15 seconds away from the top of the next hour. That means polls will close in some of these western states as well. Let's check in with Live Now's Christina Evans, and she joins me. Christina, what's going on social media right now?
Absolutely, Andrew. It's been a very busy night on social media as well. We're getting a lot of updates and able to see what's happening on the ground in certain states, including Arizona, one of those critical battleground states. I do want to show you another look here in our social center so you can get an idea of kind of how we're tracking these tweets and these other posts as they're coming in to our newsroom. But let's talk about the latest one that we're seeing out of Arizona. This is thanks to Fox 10. We're getting this update. What you're seeing now on your screen, this is an update there from Fox 10 reporter Kenzie Beach. She's there on the campus of Arizona State University in Tempe. As you can see, polls have closed in this location, but the lines are still long there, with students still putting in their opportunity to cast their vote for the presidential election and some of those other elections happening there in the battleground state of Arizona. So she did say that folks are encouraged to stay in line so that way their votes will be counted. But in areas like on college campuses at Arizona State University specifically, lines are still long even though the polls have closed in Arizona. I do want to also give you an update here on Live Now. Another look at another place in Arizona where the polls are going to remain open. This is the Navajo Nation area in Apache County. This is all thanks to the Navajo Nation president that he filed a lawsuit to extend polling hours to accommodate voters. This after the Arizona Secretary of State said that voters in the county experienced issues with e-poll books and printers. So we do know there in the Navajo Nation, those polls will remain open until 9 p.m. local time. That's just another hour or so in the state of Arizona. So again, they will stay open so that way the Navajo Nation members can cast their vote there for the presidential election. Again, Arizona, one of those critical battleground states that we're keeping a very close eye on in this election. Will be interesting to see how these things shake out. The long lines are happening on social media, but folks remaining in place to make sure that their voice is heard.
Yeah, Yeah, that's of course so true. If you're in line, stay in line. That's the message from some of these election officials there in some of these battleground states. Christina Evans, thanks so much. We'll talk soon. In the meantime here, we do want to kind of reset here at the top of the hour. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with us. So we are going to go through some of the Electoral College vote tallies at the moment. If we could pop that up there in the lower left hand of your screen, you see where the tally stands right now. Trump with 198 Electoral College votes. Harris with 99, though it is still early, of course. Polls now closed in some of these western battleground states like Nevada, like Arizona, like Montana, like Utah as well. We're tracking some down-ballot races in those states, including some of these key Senate races there as well. In the meantime, we do have, let's go back to Michigan now. The Secretary of State there, Jocelyn Benson, she's addressing the press. Let's watch.
Clear and unequivocal will of the voters. This is an incredible day for Michigan, and this is an incredible day for our nation. My thanks to clerks and staff all across the state who worked long and difficult hours over the last several months preparing for today. Their preparation paid off in a smooth and successful election, and I'm grateful to so many members of my team here tonight who helped facilitate that work all throughout the state, all day today, and the many partners we have had along the way, from our faith leaders to, yes, our sports teams. And that's one of the reasons why we're here in Ford Field tonight, to really emphasize how important these partnerships were, from faith leaders to sports leaders to business leaders to law enforcement and our Attorney General, all of whom share with us a belief that our democracy is at its strongest when every voice is heard and when every vote is counted. Finally, I want to thank the millions of voters who participated in our democracy this election. Just like our Lions, you have made winners of all of us. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions. Go ahead.
Darylyn Horn with WWJ. Were there any instances of any issues or any misinformation spread today? And if so, how was that addressed?
Yeah, one of the candidates, the former president, said there was a strong law enforcement present in Philadelphia and Detroit. That was not true. We quickly debunked it. To the extent that other people were upset, it was usually just because they couldn't get one of these stickers. We saw some of them sold on eBay, which I don't recommend. But at the same time, we also made these stickers available at our Secretary of State branch offices for the rest of this week. But no.
All right, Jocelyn Benson there. She's the Secretary of State in Michigan, talking about all those I voted stickers and how the voting has gone there in Michigan as well. But in the meantime here, let's step away from Secretary Benson. We do have one of these candidates conceding the race there. Let's go out to Maryland. Former Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, losing this Senate race to Democrat Angela Alsobrooks there. Let's watch.
Who inspired me to get into this race, and my entire family. Give them a big round of applause. I stepped up to run because I was concerned about what kind of a future we would be leaving for all of our kids and grandkids. And for me, the greatest title wasn't governor or senator, it's dad and pop-pop. I also want to thank our incredible campaign staff. Please give them a round of applause. They did an amazing job. And the thousands of volunteers all across the state who worked their butts off. You know, some campaigns drag on for years, but this one was a 9-month sprint. We ran full speed from day one, from early mornings and late nights to every corner of the state, knocking on doors, making calls and meeting voters from Oakland to Ocean City and everywhere in between. And we built a broad coalition of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and we brought together first responders, police, veterans, longshoremen, teachers, small business owners, young people and retirees, and hardworking families all across the state. This was truly a grassroots campaign. And most of all, I want to thank my fellow Marylanders, especially all those in deep blue Maryland who were willing to put country over party and split their tickets. If the pundits and the politicians
were more like the good and decent people that I meet every day on the campaign trail, our country would be so much better off. We got into this race for the right reasons, to fix the broken politics and to put our country on the right track. And we ran the kind of campaign that represents what politics can be and what it should be, driven by the people, not the party bosses, and focused on the issues that actually matter to families all across Maryland. From day one, this was the only campaign in America that reached out to Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike, because that's what it's going to take to solve the serious problems we face. Americans today are thoroughly convinced that we're hopelessly divided, that Washington is completely dysfunctional, and that our entire political system is fundamentally broken. The voices of the exhausted majority are ignored in deference to the demands of the loudest and angriest few who seem hell-bent on tearing America apart. No matter what happens in this election, we as a country must move beyond talking only with those we agree with, and we need to stop dismissing or even hating those we disagree with. We have got to find a way to come together, to listen, and to believe in each other once again, because there really is far more that unites us than divides us. While tonight did not bring the outcome we had hoped for, we can all hold our heads high. I can tell you, we left it all on the field, and I'm so damn proud of the effort. Thank you all.
All right, there's Larry Hogan, former Maryland governor there, trying his hand at Senate politics, coming up short there in Maryland, losing to Democrat Angela Alsobrooks. Of course, Alsobrooks currently is an executive with Prince George's County there, and this seat stays blue. This is Ben Cardin's seat, a longtime Democratic incumbent there. Ben Cardin opting not to seek re-election in Maryland. In the meantime here, we do want to get in some more race calls that we have right now as well. Let's move from Maryland to Massachusetts here, staying in the Senate. Elizabeth Warren fending off this Republican challenger in John Deaton. About 25% of estimated votes counted right now. The Associated Press calling the race there for Elizabeth Warren, the Democratic incumbent. She gets another 6 years in the upper chamber. In the meantime here on the presidential contest, on that level, we do have a race call. Remember, these states out west, Utah, Montana, Arizona, Nevada, polls just closed there 10 minutes ago, and we just got a quick race call there in Utah. Take a look at this. The Associated Press projecting Donald Trump will win Utah's 6 electoral votes there right now. Okay, let's stay out west right now. Let's move from Utah to Colorado there. Take a look at this. Colorado being called for Vice President Kamala Harris. You see there over Trump. 48% of estimated votes counted. Harris getting Colorado there. And you see that margin, 56 to 42, Colorado trending blue in the last really 3 cycles. If you think about it. So in the meantime here, let's get another quick commercial break. More experts, more analysts, more reporters, more results, more race calls. Yes, it's still early. I'm Andrew Kraft. We'll see you in 2 minutes. welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We have more of these candidates taking the stage at their respective election night watch parties and rallies. I want to focus our efforts right now on the Texas Senate race there. The Associated Press has not called this race yet. Other outlets have, though. For Ted Cruz, you see there 67% of estimated votes counted. You see the wide margin in the differential between Cruz and Allred. Cruz just stepped up at his election night watch party. Let's listen live.
And I believe, and I hope and pray that Donald Trump will be reelected as President of the United States. I want to say thank you, number one, to my extraordinary wife, Heidi, my best friend in the world. Such an amazing partner on this magic carpet ride of life. And I want to say thank you to our two beautiful and amazing girls, Caroline and Catherine. You know, politics at times exacts a price on the family. And I want to say I am so grateful for their love and support, and you guys are amazing. Thank you. I also want to give a special shout out to Alexis Nungri. Alexis, thank you for your incredible courage speaking out for your precious Jocelyn, and your courage has made such a profound difference in this nation. We're going to. I also want to thank all the Democrats across Texas who crossed over and supported my campaign. Including especially Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg. Who has stood strong for prosecuting violent criminals. And I want to thank every Texan across our great state who has stood with us in this fight, who worked and who fought for Texas. I want to congratulate Colin Allred on a hard-fought campaign. And I want to say to all of those who didn't support me, you have my word that I will fight for you, for your jobs, for your safety, and for your constitutional rights. But tonight, the people of Texas have spoken. And their message rings clear as a bell across our great state. Texas will remain Texas. You know, the media were ready to write off Texas. And Chuck Schumer poured in more than $100 million to our state. Well, I want to say thank you, Chuck. And I hope we win a few more Senate seats tonight because you wasted so much money in Texas. They deployed every trick, every lie, and every Hollywood celebrity they could find. Chuck Schumer tried to buy this Senate seat like it was a piece of Manhattan real estate. But he learned what we've always known, that Texas isn't for sale. And Texans can't be bought. Amen. Over the last 2 years, I've traveled every corner of this state, from the Panhandle to the Valley, from deep East Texas to far in West Texas. We have traveled 9,094 miles, 53 rallies all over the state of Texas. I've worn out my boots, at times my voice, and certainly the patience of my incredible political team, who did an amazing job on this campaign, and I think is the very best team in all of politics. And what I found traveling the state of Texas was worth every single mile. Because everywhere I went, I found something that gives me profound hope. Common sense isn't dead. It is alive and well in Texas. Everywhere I went, I met Texans who share a simple dream: to keep their families safe, to keep their freedom secure, and to keep their Texas values strong. Tonight, we are witnessing incredible results, especially with Hispanics across the state of Texas.
Well, you've been listening there to Senator Ted Cruz, the Republican winning re-election there, speaking to a crowd full of his supporters there. And you can see there, some have called this race for Cruz, though the Associated Press has not. And that is what we rely on here. You see there the numbers, Cruz up on all red now, about over 10 points. And so we'll be waiting to see whether or not this race gets called sometime soon here. Let's take that full. We have it. So 68% of estimated votes counted there in this Senate race. Like I said, Cruz declaring victory there. We wait for the Associated Press, although some outlets have called this race for Cruz. In the meantime here, we do have some more race calls to get to. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us here. Let's get to them right now. We want to focus our efforts on the presidential contest right now. Remember, some of these western states, polls closed there at the top of the last hour. I'm talking about Montana. All right, so Trump getting Montana's 4 electoral votes there. And so this is not a shocker, not a surprise. Montana ruby red there, though the Senate race, I believe, is too close to call there between Tester and Sheehy. In the meantime, let's move from Montana now to Utah. Remember, we brought you the results in the presidential contest from Utah, Trump sweeping Utah there. But there was a Senate race we had our eyes on because, remember, this is the seat being vacated by current Republican Senator Mitt Romney. This was the race to replace Mitt Romney and Republican John Curtis, the current congressman right now there from Utah, winning this race, the Senate race in Utah, over his Democratic challenger there as well. So wanted to make sure we got some of those race calls in moving forward. In the meantime here, we do have some tweets. Want to put this up. This is from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Let's go back to Texas. You see there, he says, congratulations, Senator Ted Cruz, on your big win. Senator Cruz will continue to defend Texas values of freedom, liberty, and prosperity in the U.S. Senate. Working together, we'll keep Texas. Texas, you heard that common refrain there from Ted Cruz at his party. All right, in the meantime here, we do want to bring into the conversation my friend and colleague, Austin Westfall, in the Live Now newsroom, who we've been relying so heavily on for what to make of these race calls. He joins me also with some viewer engagement. We want to hear from the viewers tonight. Take a look at the lower left portion of your screen. About 800,000 of them are watching alongside us. But first, Austin.
We've been checking in with Christina throughout the evening as she's been traversing social media and seeing what's going on there. let's ask you all who's watching. Let's ask you what's going on and what you're thinking about. We're asking you, and by the way, we'll say QR code right there on your screen. Andrew, if we can take that in full so that the people can point their smartphone camera at that QR code, it'll send you to a web page where you can vote on this poll. We've already had a couple of results come in. That's because some of you are looking at our website and you're voting on this before we even brought it to air. Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania. Those are the 7 key battlegrounds we've been following. The question is, which battleground state do you think will have the most impact on the presidential race? Right now, it appears, with 51% of the vote, Pennsylvania is looking like it's taking the cake. But again, we've only gotten a few dozen, I believe, answers to this poll so far. So if you want, you can either scan that QR code on your screen, or if we take it off the screen before you're able to do that, you can simply type in livenowfox.com/connect. livenowfox.com/connect. You can tell us which battleground state you think will have the most impact on the presidential race. We've been talking about this ad nauseum, Andrew. Pennsylvania is going to be the common denominator for both Harris and Trump's easiest path to the White House. Pennsylvania so far winning in our poll. Okay, so as you mentioned, let's bring up the map. This is what we're working with right now. We've got Harris with 112. We have Trump with 198. Trump is 72 electoral votes away from the magic number. We have had so many race calls in the last few minutes here. So we're seeing a lot of this dark red being shaded in. Most of these not necessarily a surprise. I want to focus on the battleground states, though. Let's start with Wisconsin, and let's zoom in. 48% of the votes in Wisconsin have been tallied, and so far, this is a tight one. Trump right now, 1 point above Harris, 49.8% versus 48.8%. That's with nearly half of those votes being tallied so far. Looks like Michigan is leaning blue right now. Only 21% of the votes called so far. Less than a quarter of the results have been tallied in Michigan. Of course, so much attention is going to be on the Detroit metro. How are those votes going to fall? That's also, I believe, the largest hub of Arab Americans that are going to be voting as well. It'll be interesting to see how they react to some of the news and how the Biden administration has handled the Israel-Hamas war. Moving on to more battlegrounds. Pennsylvania, this is the one that our viewers say is the most important. Just over half of the votes have been tallied so far. 55% has been counted in Pennsylvania. And Trump right now has just under a 3-point lead.
All right, Austin,
in this.
Don't mean to cut you off here. We do have more of these now winning candidates stepping up to their election rallies and watch parties, including Maryland's Senator-elect Angela also Brooks there. Let's watch.
Doesn't it feel good to be in Maryland tonight? Oh, yes. Well, first of all, to Alex, you know, she forgot to tell you one important part of that story. She's the one who got on the bus after I had to race after her first grade friends and said, well, we have to wait for a certain 40-year-old to come across the park. Well, I have to say, first of all, tonight, I must give credit to the absolutely unfailing God that I serve. One whose grace has been sufficient at every turn. I don't have enough words to say thank you to God, whose faith has been unfailing. I want to thank him so much. And just a moment ago, I received a call from Governor Hogan congratulating me on tonight's victory. Offering his congratulations and the congratulations of Yumi. And I know that we both share a very deep love for Maryland and commitment to Maryland, so I certainly want to thank him so much for his service. Now, I start off with something that is so obvious, and it's that it couldn't be overstated, but tonight absolutely could not have been possible without you. Without every single person in this room and the people of Maryland. So to the people of Maryland, thank you so very much. Thank you to Marylanders. Thank you. Now, if I named every person who shares this victory with us tonight, we'd be here for a few hours. But I can't leave the stage without thanking some very special people who made tonight possible. First and foremost, to the single most incredible, the baddest campaign team, let me tell you, ever to have graced the earth. This team is incredible, and they are led by the incomparable Sheila O'Connell, our campaign manager. Thank you so much to Sheila, who is what I love to call a super bad woman. Sheila led this, she flew this plane, no matter what the winds were, against over $100 million that was spent against our campaign. And we're here tonight for every single person on this team who gave everything they had. They left it all on the field. This was the single most talented team. I've seen every single one of them. I want to thank them so much for their commitment. I want to thank them for sharing their talents with me, and I can't wait to continue working and making your efforts worthwhile. I'd also like to thank some of our partners, Emily's List. I want to say thank you so much to Emily's List and the super incredible Jessica Mackler, Higher Heights, and Glenda Carr. There's a network across the country electing women. I want to thank them so much. And also want to thank all of our partners in labor who are here tonight, many of whom are here tonight. All of our faith leaders and faith community, want to thank them so much. To the super bad Divine Nine, my brothers and sisters of the Divine Nine. Yes, the coalition. Yeah, yes. Yes. I'd also like to say thank you so much to the Democratic Party led by Ken Allman and also Dr. Charlene Dukes. Want to thank them so much for all their incredible support. All of my friends in elective office, don't we have the baddest captain of Team Maryland, Governor Wes Moore? I want to thank him so much. All of our friends and our federal delegation who are here tonight. You just heard from Senators Cardin and Van Hollen. Want to thank them. All of the congressmen who are here. I see Congressman Hoyer. Want to thank him so very much. Congressman Mfume, sir, thank you so much. Congressman Sarbanes, and Congressman Raskin. Yes, Congressman Raskin. Yes. America's Congressman, Congressman Ivey. Want to thank them, Rupersberger. Thank them so much for all of their support, as well as all of my other brothers and sisters in elective service who are here tonight, from the state senate, our delegation, our council members, all the Democratic Central Committee members who worked so hard on this campaign, to all of our volunteers, all of Team Alsobrooks, every single volunteer. Thank you not just for believing in this movement, but I thank you for working so hard to take the movement to the people. So for every single volunteer who opened your home, met us in coffee houses, met us in backyards, for all the donors who contributed, I want to just say thank you so much for every phone call and every door knock. Thank you so very much. And to the people, thank you, that's Wanda Durant, you guys. To the people of Maryland, especially the folks who came out. Now, you all know we started a little later tonight. And you know why that was? It was because our college students and first-time voters, so many of them showed up at the polls tonight. They had to keep the polls open later because our children came out to vote tonight. And so I want to just say thank you to them, and also want to just give a special shout out to my hometown, Prince George's County, Maryland. The ones who I love so much. You know, I woke up this morning to my neighbors
All right, you're hearing there from Angela Alsobrooks declaring victory after her race call against former Maryland Governor, Republican Larry Hogan there, and she goes to the Senate, replacing outgoing retiring Senator, the Democrat, Ben Cardin here. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks so much for being with us. We're a little past the bottom of the hour now here, a little after 8:30 Mountain Time, a little after 10:30 on the East Coast there. Thanks so much for being with us. We are in for it tonight. Remember, we're not stopping. We are going live, raw, and unfiltered throughout the course of the evening, bringing you these results in real time, coming to us from the Associated Press here. And in the meantime, we do have some of these race calls I want to bring you. Let's go to the District of Columbia right now. You see there Harris getting their 3 electoral votes. This race was called, about 10 minutes ago here. Also, we have some results coming in on some of these western battleground states, including Arizona. Take a look at that. Arizona has 11 electoral votes. As you know, it's a battleground, very close here, but a little under half of estimated votes counted there. So neck and neck there in Arizona between Trump and Harris. Let's go to Missouri briefly. Remember, Hawley was facing a Democratic challenger in Lucas Kunce there, and he won this race. Hawley 52 over Lucas Kunce there 46. 45% of estimated votes counted. Hawley goes back to the Senate with another 6-year term. In the meantime here, we do want to bring into the conversation my colleague Austin Westfall in the Live Now newsroom and New York Post's A.G. Gankarski. He joins us as well. We'll start with Austin. Austin, we were trying to get through where the battleground states lie right now as far as the presidential contest is concerned. What do they?
Let's go through them. So let's start up in Wisconsin. Let's just go with what the AP is calling for now. 53% of the vote so far tallied, according to the Associated Press. That's a tight race. 49.5% to 49%. Trump up by 1/2 of a percentage point in Wisconsin. Moving over to Michigan, which is currently, and it's light blue, but if you really look at the results, that's a dead tie. 49.1 to 49.1. It looks like we just lost that. Let's move on to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, considered the most pivotal battleground state, 19 electoral votes up for grabs in the Keystone State. Right now, Trump has a roughly over 100,000 vote lead over Kamala Harris right now. So we're looking at Trump having just under 3 points of a lead versus Harris right now. That's the most important battleground. Going down to North Carolina, we're getting in a little more results there. 83% of the votes have been tallied in the Tar Heel state, and right now Trump has just over a 2.5% lead. Going further south to Georgia, 88%. So we've been speaking all night about preliminary results, Andrew. We can toss that out now when we're talking about states like this. Georgia has 88% of the votes tallied. Trump with 51.3%, Harris with 48.1%. I'm going to zoom out again because we've been saying all night, Trump's easiest path to victory: Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Still a lot of votes to be counted in Pennsylvania, but for now we're seeing that Trump has a slight margin, especially in Georgia here. We're starting to see some of these counties really fill in. Not surprisingly, seeing this kind of blue blob in the Atlanta metro, but then we see all of these bright red and dark red rural counties that are pretty much balancing out, if not overcoming, some of what we're seeing in some of these larger cities, specifically the Atlanta metro. Let's zoom back out just to make sure that we hit every battleground state that we can. Arizona's the other one. 50% of the votes in here. So half of the vote tallied. Most of this coming from Maricopa County. Maricopa County is most of the ball game in the Grand Canyon state. Right now, we've got a dead tie, 49.6 to 49.6. Interesting to say the least, Andrew, as this map gets filled out. Let's ask AG about it.
So, AG, thanks so much for being with us. AG with the New York Post, of course. What can we glean from some of these battleground states here? Is it accurate to say that some are too close to call? Not Georgia, is it?
You know, I think Georgia is trending toward Trump, but the thing I'm noticing is that blue wall is looking like it's going to crack. I mean, you know, what's happening in Michigan, what's happening in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, it's going to come down to late returns from these like bigger cities. But really, it's looking more like 2016 than 2020. And that's kind of remarkable for people who thought that Harris had a pathway that was more like Biden's in 2020. It's looking much more like Trump's got the 2016 coalition. Men are coming out to vote for him, and this is really a remarkable political comeback in the making by Donald Trump, because I think a lot of people looked at this a few weeks back and said there was no way he can make inroads in the blue wall. And there was a lot of thought to say Jill Stein would be a bigger factor in a place like Michigan. He hasn't been as of yet. So this is just Trump versus Harris, like, R versus D. But, Trump is really, he's really driving it right now.
So, AG, I've got Pennsylvania up right now. 51% of the vote so far is going for Trump. He has roughly a 3-point lead over Harris. 57% of the vote has been counted. Let's talk about what is considered the most pivotal battleground state here. There is still 43% of the vote to be tallied. What are we going to be watching for as we get that 43% of the vote in?
Philadelphia County, because that is predominantly Democratic. I think in 2020 was more than 80% for Joe Biden, and you expect similar margins with Kamala Harris. But the question is always turnout. Like, how many people actually turn out to vote? How many votes are counted in the coming days? It's not just what we see tonight, but we'll see what we see in the next couple of days as well. So, a Trump lead, say 3 o'clock in the morning, isn't necessarily safe in Pennsylvania because of Philadelphia County primarily. The rest of the state, Trump's got an advantage in it, but that's machine politics, and it works a little bit more slowly, it works a little more gradually, and it looks a bit rougher from the outside, where people are saying, why haven't these votes been counted already? You've got late votes, you've got precincts that take a while to count for whatever reason, you've got anomalies that happen in the counting process, all kinds of things. So people will be watching that one over the next couple of days for sure.
Okay, so AG, we have a live picture there at the Harris Walls watch party. You said there are indications of 2016 vibes, so to speak, when Hillary Clinton lost. Do you see any of that on the faces of some of these Harris Walls supporters here? Because I want to ask you this. The question going into the night was whether or not we would know a winner in the presidential contest tonight. Do you think we will, or will it take till tomorrow morning?
I think it's going to take a day or two before we have something where we can say somebody's going to be the winner. I just don't think that we're going to have enough of the count in tonight, especially in those blue wall states, to really figure it out. I think Arizona may take a little bit of time too. It looks a little close from what I'm seeing also. So, between those states, you've got, 55 electoral votes between the four? That's a lot of suspense. So, expecting a winner before you go to bed tonight, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But the trend right now is Donald Trump. It's looking good for him. But, you have to consider that the late votes, that the late counted vote, the mail vote, things like that is going to trend Democratic. And, so any margin that Trump has at, 10:41 Eastern time may not hold, when we wake up in the morning.
Let's talk about Detroit. I want to talk about Michigan. We talk so much about some of these southern states, and we've been talking about Pennsylvania. Let's talk about Michigan. And I'm going to just kind of zoom in on Detroit here, because that's one of the largest Arab American populations in the country. When we focus in and we go in on what is, and let's just make sure we get this correct here, we're focusing in on the area where Detroit is. So Wayne County is what we're talking about here, AG. So right now, Wayne County is showing that Trump is up 61% to 37.5%. We're talking about Trump having a commanding victory so far with 24% of the votes in. 24% may not sound like a lot, but what do you make of what we're seeing out of this county so far?
It really comes down to the precincts that are coming in, because a county in and of itself isn't necessarily the thing. There are precincts in the counties that'll tell you what the real story is that's happening. And, when you're watching that precinct data being dumped in, that can move these totals. And we've got these margins as thin as they are in Michigan. You get 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 votes dumped in. And if they're D plus 80, that makes a remarkable difference in the narrative.
So we do have some race calls we do want to get to right now here on the presidential level. Let's go to Kansas right now, AG in Austin. So you see there Trump getting Kansas's 6 electoral votes, the Associated Press calling Kansas for former President Donald Trump here. Let's stay in the Midwest. We also have a race call there in the Hawkeye state of Iowa. Iowa's 6 electoral votes going to Donald Trump there over Harris with 56% of estimated votes counted. Now, this is really interesting because we got to dive into some of the numbers there in Iowa, because there was this poll that was put out over the weekend by Ann Seltzer. She's considered the gold standard there of polling mavens in Iowa, AG in Austin. She had Harris winning Iowa by 3 in her poll. She even considered her poll an outlier here, AG, but obviously we're not seeing that here. Trump getting the state, and it's a pretty sizable margin so far, more than half of votes counted.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump campaign said that they tell people to look at the Emerson poll, which is more of a 10-point poll. The Seltzer poll, the methodology seemed really weird to me, and this idea that there's this groundswell of women in this very conservative state that elected Kim Reynolds governor and all of that was moving over to Harris, it didn't make a lot of sense. But when you look at polls, we know this. It's like it comes down to your sample size. It comes down to your random pick. So you got 600, 800,000 people. Not all those people are created equal. So it looks like a real sampling error from Seltzer, back to the drawing board moment. But, every presidential race has really wild polls. And this just happened to be one of them. And it raised questions about Iowa, but I don't think those questions were legitimate. Obviously, voters did what we expected them to do before this election. Leaving aside that Seltzer poll.
Yeah. So, AG, as I zoom in on the map here, we're starting to see that almost every single battleground, in fact, every single battleground that has results, save for Nevada, which we do not have results in for yet, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. None of them have been called in Trump's favor yet. All of them so far are, they're light red. They are leaning red right now as Trump is ahead in these races. What does that mean? We saw so many discussions out there saying that this race would be as close as it possibly could be. Is this something that's fascinating you as we're seeing this night progress? I mean, Georgia, North Carolina, we have over 80% of the vote tallied. Over 60% of the vote has been tallied in Pennsylvania. Michigan has just about a quarter of the votes tallied, and over 50% of the votes tallied in Wisconsin, as well as half of the votes tallied in Arizona. Out of those 6 battlegrounds, AG, what's standing out to you?
I mean, to me, it really is the trend. And you have to ask yourself right now, who would rather be, Trump or Harris? And, Trump, basically, his strategy of going all over the place, campaigning everywhere, taking all kinds of questions, even from adversarial media, it seems to have paid off. And, I think voters are responding to the authenticity, to the viscerality of the Trump campaign, to the approach, and to the central question, are you better off 4 years ago? Trump weaved that question in over and over again in his closing argument. And, many of these voters in these states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and so on, they looked at their pocketbooks, their bank balances, their credit cards, and they said, no, we're not better. And, I think Harris not doing press conferences, on kind of doing these parachuting in, doing these scripted rallies, I don't think that helped her. I think voters really wanted a connection, especially after the 2020 pandemic election where, Joe Biden basically campaigned from his basement. Harris did a version of that. And the voters seem to be rewarding Donald Trump here.
So, AG, let's just transition briefly here to some of these Senate contests and some of these Western battlegrounds as well here. We're getting results in on the Arizona Senate race. Let's take this. Ruben Gallego up over Lake 53-46 right now with 49% of estimated votes counted. If we can also bring up the Montana Senate race too between Sheehy and Tester, just so we can get a good lowdown of where that race stands at the moment. Let's take that. There you see Sheehy up 56 over Tester's 42 there with about 5% of estimated votes counted. So Montana still has a kind of long way to go there. But these are the Senate races to watch still now that we are moving our way westward across the country, though some of the other races, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, those Senate seats, they're still in the mix. They haven't been called yet, at least by the Associated Press. AG.
Yeah, and, Republicans need to flip a couple of these, and even if you go back to 2022, they're saying that 24 would be their year for the Senate. And they've got a lot of opportunities, and I think as Trump rises or falls, so too do the Senate candidates. If you look at the state polling that came out in the various swing states where you had Senate races, the candidates will run a couple points behind Trump. So if Trump can win these states by 2 or 3 points, that's very good for a Dave McCormick or Eric Hovde or somebody like that. I think if you look at Montana, I think, Trump's strength is going to lift Sheehy in that race. I don't think Kerry Lake has a shot, per se. The polls I saw of Arizona had a lost split ticket between Trump and Gallego. But, overall, if Republicans can pick off a couple of these Democratic seats, then it's a very good night because they probably will take the House also. So you can see a unified Republican Washington, D.C. next year, and Donald Trump would be able to enact a lot of this policy agenda that he was thwarted, from doing during his first term, if he's elected.
So, AG, if we can come back onto my screen here, I want to just show the Senate map. The balance of power is behind me here, and this is giving us a look at how this thing is shaping out. So, right now, and obviously you need 50 seats in order to have control of the Senate if the president is Donald Trump, because that would mean that J.D. Vance would be the tiebreaker. That would give Republicans control. That would mean they would only need 50. Now, if they want control regardless of who wins the presidency, they would need 51. Let's tease this out, AG. There are quite a few competitive Senate races around the country: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, as you mentioned. It's not as competitive in Arizona as it once was. Montana, we are seeing that John Tester has a steep uphill battle. Is there really any path to the Democrats maintaining control in the upper chamber at this point?
Not with the way this map is going. It's going to be very difficult, and I think you would need for the Senate candidates to really outperform Harris in state after state. My guess right now is 52, 53 Republican seats. And that's really what you want if you're the Republicans, because, it's very hard to maintain a unified caucus in the House or the Senate. So you want that margin to be a couple points higher than just a 50-50 split with Vance casting a bunch of tie-breaking votes. It's really early to tell with these Senate races, but I'm less confident in those than I am in Trump right now. But, I really do think Trump is the rising tide that will lift some of these Senate candidates up.
Okay, so in the meantime, A.G. Gankarski with the New York Post, we're going to have to leave it at that. We do appreciate it. We are nearing the top of the hour. Austin Westfall here in the Live Now newsroom with me. But in the meantime, though, speaking of some of these Senate races, I want to put up some of the results. Let's go back to Virginia right now. Take a look at this. Democratic incumbent Tim Kaine there leading over his Republican challenger, Hung Cao. You see there. We also have Tim Kaine speaking live right now to his rally group of supporters. Let's listen.
Embody, and by the progress that you've demonstrated. So it's going to be a long night. We're going to have, however all these results go outside Virginia, we're going to have a lot of work to do. We're going to have a lot of work to do to promote more peace in the world. We're going to have a lot of work to do to create this economy that is not just for a few, but for the many, and expand healthcare options and protect reproductive freedom and fight gun violence and and battle for a cleaner environment. And there's so much work to do. But we've shown in Virginia that if we link arms, we can walk side by side. We can andar con la gente. We can walk side by side with people and make progress. So thank you so much for putting your faith in me. And you may or may not, over the course of the next 6 years, agree or disagree with this or that, but I won't embarrass you. I won't let you down. I won't cause you to lose a moment of sleep. And we will keep moving Virginia and this country forward. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then watch TV very late, and we're going to go win, right? We're going to go win.
All right, you're just listening in there to Tim Kaine wrapping up some of the speaking to reporters. You can see there the 52-48 margin right now. Not officially called by the AP, but a happy crowd on the hand there in that state of Virginia. All right, we're following it all here on Live Now from Fox. A change of anchor. I'm Andy Mack now in the desk, supplanting Andrew Kraft after a great election night for him, covering all the latest. All right, let's continue on. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We have more polls closing here at the top of the hour as it gets closer to 8 o'clock Pacific time. Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox here on this election night. Thank you so much for joining us. Some 900,000 people tuning in across all of our streaming platforms. So we appreciate you joining us as we're approaching the top of the hour. 8 o'clock on the West Coast is nearing very closely right now. Let's continue on. I do want to put up just some of these Live Now looks, including at Howard University, the Kamala Harris watch party getting going. The vibes there still very high as well, despite what we're seeing in the polls right now, and also in West Palm Beach, Florida. A live look there with all the American flags. Plenty of people excited for this as we're soon to have polls close in California, Oregon, and Washington. And let's continue on. Let's bring in again my colleague here, Austin Westfall, to discuss the latest of what we're seeing from this on the West Coast. Austin, thank you so much for joining us. So what are we looking at now, and what do we expect here as polls close in just a matter of minutes on the West Coast?
Good to be with you, Andy Mack, and props to our colleague Andrew Kraft for a 5-hour-long marathon manning the controls there. Let's get into the maps. So here's what we're talking about. We're going to be watching some of these West Coast states now. At this point, polls are going to be closing in, and it looks like we had a misstep there, but polls are going to be closing in states like California, Oregon, and Washington at the top of the hour. We do, of course, unless something completely surprising happens, we do expect that those 3 states will fall in the blue category. Now, what's going to be interesting, though, about these states is in the House. We haven't really been checking in on the balance of power in the House so far. The magic number is 218, Andy Mack. Right now, the Republicans have secured 152 of those seats, Democrats 98. Why am I talking about this on the West Coast? That's because there are tons of toss-up races all along this coast. So many of them in California. There's one specifically in southwestern Washington. That's going to be a particularly close one. Bend, Oregon has a close toss-up race. California's Central Valley, parts of Southern California, there's 5 House seats in California alone, currently owned by the GOP, but they're considered to be complete toss-up races. That's why it's been, as the weeks have developed, it's been much tougher for pundits to forecast who may control the House. There are so many tight races, and another thing to mention about the Andy Mack is that not only are these going to be super tight, but if they're as tight as they have been in years past, it could be so close that it could take days, if not over a week, to get some of these things done. That's the House.
A lot to get to with that. And let's talk about the Senate seat in California, as we're expecting that one potentially close with Adam Schiff, the Democrat there, going up against Republican Steve Garvey. What do we make of this, and what is kind of the outlook on this in the Senate, and how does it, the balance of power factor in all of this in California?
So ultimately, as far as the question of balance of power goes, we don't expect California to make any seismic shifts with the balance of power. We don't consider this race to be a toss-up like we do in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, states of that nature. California is an interesting one, as you can see. That might be a familiar name to some people. Steve Garvey, he was a first baseman. He played for the Dodgers. He played for the Padres in mostly the 70s and the 80s. He is running as a Republican against Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff led the charge on the impeachment process during Trump's first impeachment. As soon as polls close, we may get an early call in this race. Of course, any statewide race in California would be expected to fall blue, but no results from the Associated Press as of right now, and it looks like the clock just hit 8 p.m. on the West Coast. So polls closing, we should start to see some color, Andy Mack, in some of these states here shortly.
Yeah, and the colors will start lighting up any minute now, as you mentioned, just the 8 o'clock hour there, as we're continuing to follow it on the West Coast as we're moving east to west.
And I'll mention, it just happened right now, just as we were speaking. So Washington, and there we go. So we're seeing some of these Senate races. Washington, as soon as the polls close, and this is just how reliably blue these states are. I'm going to just guess 0, yes, there's zeros on these. There's probably zeros on California as well. That's because the AP has such confidence in these states. As soon as results start coming in, they're going to be so overwhelmingly blue that they feel comfortable calling these races as soon as the results start coming through. So, Adam Schiff, going to be the senator in California for 6 years, and it appears there as Washington as well. We're going to see so no numbers there as well, but still, Maria Cantwell going to be starting off her 6-year Senate tenure in the state of Washington. Andy.
All right, very, very interesting. West Coast, we're following it very closely. Also, we're going to check back in with you over the course of the evening, as we've had over the last several hours as well, but we appreciate your time. Let's get out to more different conversations here as we're hearing now west to east, as I do want to put up just this, one of the most recent calls there in Idaho being called for the President Donald Trump as well. So I do want to put up just this, those 4 electoral votes going for Donald Trump in Idaho. 4 electoral votes is kind of the balance of power as we talk about all those electoral votes being cast up. So we're hearing different ones about Nebraska. You know about the split one there with that, but also in Maine, we're talking about All right, and we're also getting more about Washington as well. So let's continue to follow the latest here. As you can see, just the excitement within this watch party there in West Palm Beach in Florida at this watch party, as they maybe see some of these results come in themselves, see the excitement of there, as instead on the other side in the watch party at Howard University, it is Kamala Harris eventually getting the decision, 12 electoral votes in her favor going for the Vice President Kamala Harris on the West Coast. As you did hear from Austin Westfall, those going blue very, very quickly. The blue for Washington, we just see it go blue for Oregon. Let's bring in Austin one more time here as we're getting this about this. What do we make of this decision? And give me a breakdown of this here, Austin.
Yeah, just like the Senate, just like we were just talking about, as soon as the polls closed, the AP feels confident enough to call these western states in favor of Harris. California has the most electoral votes in the country. We're talking about 54 votes coming from California alone. Washington is going to have 12 electoral votes. Oregon not being called yet. It's likely blue. Let's go in and let's see what we're working with here. It looks like Harris is up by just over 21%. That's with 44% of the votes counted. It looks like the AP not feeling quite as confident as they are in Washington and California about Oregon, but nonetheless, Harris with a dominant lead in Oregon as well. So what does that say for the electoral count at large? Now that California's huge swath of votes has been added, that jumps Harris up to 179. Trump at 214. That means Trump is 56 votes away from claiming the presidency. Harris looks like she is roughly 91 votes away from the presidency. While we're at it, Andy, let's look at the battlegrounds again. Let's just do a swing through all the states that very well could make or break this race. Wisconsin. Now we're at 60% of the votes tabulated. Trump appearing to have just over a 2% lead in Wisconsin. Neighboring Michigan. Michigan was leaning blue not too long ago. Now it looks like it's leaning red, and Trump is up by over 4%. That's with 28% of the votes counted. So that is and we just saw it update a little bit. It looks like Trump might have gained a little bit of ground slightly there. 28, just over 1/4 of the votes counted in Michigan. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes at stake. This one was a tight one for quite some time. And now it looks like as more and more votes are tabulated, we're nearing 3/4 of the votes being tabulated. 70% of the votes in Pennsylvania have been tallied. And right now, former President Trump has just over a 3% lead over the vice president. That's a major state right there. And that's a lead that Trump has with only 30% of the vote left that Harris can make up. North Carolina, the Tar Heel state. Again, the AP has not called any of these battleground states yet, but 87% of the vote has been tabulated in North Carolina. Trump has just under a 3% lead over the vice president. Let's bring you out to Georgia, where we're seeing 90% of the vote tallied, and Trump, he's got a 3-point lead above the vice president. Let's head out west. Nevada, not reporting anything in, as far as the Associated Press is telling us so far. That's the one battleground we haven't heard from yet. But Arizona, still at exactly the point it was the last time we checked on it. Exactly 50% of the vote tallied right now. Trump with a 0.2 of a point lead over Harris, Andy.
All right, that is very, very interesting. A good breakdown here as we enter a new hour just to get everyone up to speed on those 7 key battleground states. All right, Austin, we're going to be checking back in with you in just a little bit, but I do want to give you that roundup of some of what we're looking at in some of those states along the West Coast, including in Arizona, including in California, Washington, and Oregon. I do want to just put these up, a full roundup of what we saw on the West Coast. This one in California being called for Kamala Harris in terms of this, and that 54 big electoral votes for her, the largest state in terms of that. Also in Washington as well, 12 electoral votes going to Kamala Harris, and then also in Oregon as well going for Kamala Harris. And I also want to talk now about California as we're learning that information about the Senate, a key race with Dianne Feinstein's seat being open, the late Dianne Feinstein, as this one going for Adam Schiff over Steve Garvey, the former Dodger, the former Padre, Adam Schiff, moving chambers from the House to the Senate as he takes over that seat. So big news in terms of the Senate as the Democrats, they keep that seat blue. We'll talk more about the balance of power and everything to do with it. But let's continue on. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get you more live pictures, different speeches. We're expecting to hear from Adam Schiff, likely Steve Gary, within the hour, just based on the fact that this was called so quickly after polls closed there in that state. We'll have much more here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back in year two, live now from Fox on election night, just past 11 o'clock on the East Coast as we continue to follow the latest in terms of the balance of power and the race for the White House. And I do want to talk now about the Senate race in Ohio. No call as of yet, but Bernie Moreno leading in a big way over the 30-term incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown, some 300,000 votes, just under 300,000 votes, a lead for Bernie Moreno. And we do see him speaking to the crowd of supporters in Westlake, Ohio. Let's take you out to this right here on Live Now from Fox.
Republican leadership. With President Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House, we are going to advance an agenda that is an American agenda. An agenda that says we are pro-immigration, but not pro-invasion. We're going to make certain that the people who come to this country are invited here like I was, like my family was, on our terms. We're going to make this country an energy-dominant nation so that my kids do not grow up in a country where we ever rely on a foreign nation for energy ever again. And we have that energy right here in Ohio. That means coal, that means natural gas, it means oil, and it means nuclear. And in terms of EV mandates, they need to be gone first thing in January. And we're going to make certain that we tell California, you don't get to dictate to the whole country what our emission standards are. We're going to dictate that at the federal level. We're going to allow consumers to pick the kind of car they want. Look, the other piece that I want to talk about is what President Trump has brought to this country, which is peace and stability around the world. America will be a leader in the world. Will always be a leader in the world. American leadership has made the planet safer, more prosperous, and more secure than at any point in human history. But it means that we ensure peace through strength. The weakness of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is rejected, and I know that from whether it's in Jerusalem or Kiev, or anywhere else on earth, or Taiwan, they're cheering this election because they know American strength will ensure peace around the world. And if you're a police officer in this country, just know you have a senator in me and a Republican Party that will always have your back. And we got rid of Chuck Schumer tonight, but pretty soon we're going to get rid of another couple people that need to be gone. First among them, Randy Weingarten should start packing her bags. Because what we need in this country is school choice for all Americans. And then as I look at my children, I've blessed with 4 kids. And by the way, can we give my wife an amazing round of applause, please? Thank you, Bridget. Bridget. Look, we need to make certain that we honor teachers, They're doing great work in every corner.
You're just listening in there as they were talking with Bernie Moreno, talking in very excited terms, optimistic terms, although the AP has yet to call that race in his favor. It is looking to be a margin that continues to grow for Moreno over Sherrod Brown, the 3-term incumbent Democrat there in that state of Ohio, as this one will flip from blue to red likely as soon as that's called. But that is what we're following right now as they moved off the shot. But we do have another shot here on Live Now from Fox on the election night in Arizona, another key battleground state of what we're following here in Arizona. I want to put up this post from Ruben Gallego, the Democrat from Arizona, saying, shout out to poll workers across Arizona who show up early, stay late, and keep our democracy running smoothly. Your dedication to every single vote is a testament to our state's strength. Let's take you out to this, the speech from him to supporters in Arizona. Let's listen into this live.
I ever owned that my Uncle Al gave, who could not be here today. He gave it to me because when I went to college, I couldn't afford to buy a new suit. So he gave me one of his. When I got to college, I saw other kids were happy because they were just happy to be there, happy to be at Harvard. I was happy because I finally got a bed. In college, one of my beds was cleaning the bathrooms of fellow Harvard students, scrubbing the toilets of the kids I had to see the next day. But I did it all proudly, because I believed that if I worked hard and followed the rules, even a poor kid would succeed in America. That's America. Because of that, I decided I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to serve my country, the country that gave my family a chance to live the American dream, the greatest country in the world. So I enlisted in the infantry of the United States Marine Corps. I know there's some out there. I had the honor of fighting alongside my brothers in Iraq in Lima Company 325, assigned to Al-Anbar, Iraq. They called us Lucky Lima at first, but unfortunately, eventually our luck ran out. Our company saw some of the hardest days of the war. And those were tough days. But the fight for my brothers was always worth it. And so was this fight for Arizona. We had a mantra on this campaign. Go everywhere and talk to everyone, and that's exactly what we did. We didn't take one vote for granted. For many candidates, Latinos and Native American voters are the afterthought, but they were part of our outreach from day one, and we worked to earn every vote. And we didn't write off our Republican brothers and sisters either. For 22 months, I've traveled all around this state. The thing I learned is that we have so much in common. Because whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, we all want the same thing, a better life for our kids, and to give our kids a better future. It's just that simple. And that's exactly why I'm here. I believe in the American dream, and I want everyone else to have the same opportunity to make it that I had. I'm here tonight because I believe women should also be able to make their own decisions about their own bodies. Because costs are still too high. And I understand how hard it is to work just to bring home enough to pay the bills, to pay the rent, and maybe, just maybe, save up a little. I understand the dignity of work, of trying to put 40, 60, 80 hours together to try and make a life for your kids. But there are too many people in Washington, D.C. who don't understand that kind of hard work and who don't actually respect that work. They don't understand what it means to actually struggle every day and still believe the next day is going to be better. Look, it looks like this race won't be called tonight, but one result is already coming through and clear. We fought for Arizona. Because of that, we are going to win. Even though our race isn't quite over yet, I still want to thank all Arizonans who supported me, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. And to those who didn't, I want you to know that regardless of who you voted for today, I will stand up and fight for you. As hard as I fought to get out of poverty, as hard as I fight now for my family, as hard as I fought in the Marine Corps, I will be fighting for you in Washington, D.C. To my family, my mom, my sisters, my aunts, my cousins, and they're all here, we're a big Latino family, I will always have your back, because you always had my back. And to Sydney, Michael, Isla, who always gave me a reason to fight, I will keep fighting. To my Lima Company Marines, the men I patrol with in Iraq, the men I went to the hardest days of war with and came back to a country that had forgotten us. John, Andy, and Justin, who are here tonight, I love you, brothers. Number 5, and I'll always have your back. To my campaign team, to all the volunteers and our supporters, to the unions and the community groups who stood in front lines with us the whole time, thank you. So for the veterans out there suffering from PTSD, for the single moms working 2 jobs and raising 3 kids, for the dads who have to miss that bedtime for their kids to work that overnight shift, and for the kid sleeping on the floor tonight in Arizona, dreaming of a better future, this is for you. Gracias, Arizona.
You were just listening in there to Ruben Gallego talking to a crowd of supporters, noting that it would likely not be called tonight just based on the protocols in place in that state, but a very confident, optimistic person there speaking at that rally there in Arizona. I did want to put up just the number of votes, the sizable margin he leads over Kerry Lake at this point. Some 7-point lead right now, so no call as of tonight. He admitted that such, but a sizable lead for him this evening. But we do want to get you out to some calls in terms of the race for the White House in some very key battleground states. This one in North Carolina going in favor of Trump as Trump takes the key battleground state of North Carolina, 50% to 48%, just over 100,000 votes as Trump, the AP calling this almost 90% of the votes counted, tallied at this point. Another battleground state not called at this point, but in favor of the former president in a significant way, 51% to 48.3% as well. And we want to put up this, a post from our Fox 5 team, Eric Perry saying, breaking, Donald Trump has an insurmountable lead with a number of votes outstanding. That a quote from the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, during a late night briefing. So some big news, and let's continue on. Let's bring in my colleague right now, Austin Westfall, to discuss what this means moving forward, because this is a big development in terms of the race for this White House. Austin, North Carolina going for the former President Donald Trump, and Raffensperger saying an insurmountable lead for Trump in Georgia. How pivotal is this moment for Trump?
Raffensperger saying that is very important. The AP has not officially called the race yet, so we can't officially call it ourselves here. A live look at the Trump watch party where we've been watching. There's been a lot of smiling faces. We have been keeping an eye on both of these watch parties. Here's how the map is looking now that we're getting some of these pertinent race calls in. This is the first battleground state that's officially been called. That puts Donald Trump up to 230. He's 40 away from the presidency. Harris still at 179. Let's take a look. Solidly red at this point. We've been saying all night, Trump's easiest path to victory is North Carolina, which he has now. Georgia, which with 90% of the votes in, he has almost a 3-point lead. So, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania. So, if he gets these 3 states and every other state falls the way we expect it to, that means that former President Trump will become president again. The only time that's ever happened before was Grover Cleveland. He was the 22nd and 24th president of the United States. So, North Carolina getting called. I'm watching Pennsylvania closely now. I'm watching Georgia closely now. Again, 9/10 of all the votes have been counted in Georgia. He's got almost 3 points up. Pennsylvania, just over 3/4 of the vote now tallied. Trump has, and right now we're looking at just about a 3-point lead out of PA as well. So Trump has leads in 2 absolutely crucial states. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that he has leads right now in Wisconsin. 66% of the votes in. Right now, Trump has about a 3-point advantage there. Michigan, fewer of those votes counted. About a third of them are in so far. But Donald Trump right now with a sizable lead over Kamala Harris. That one looking like it's just over a 6-point advantage. We go over to Arizona. It's very possible we don't hear any more results in from them for the rest of the night. They've been stuck at 50%. Nonetheless, that's at a dead tie right now. It's very possible, Andy, the way this is playing out, though, we might not need to worry about Arizona. Correct. We're going to keep an eye specifically right now on Georgia and PA, now that North Carolina's been called.
Yeah, it's a very good breakdown of all of the come, and of course, North Carolina, Georgia, insurmountable leads in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan might be too close to call at this point, just based on the margin there. All right, Austin, we're going to check back in with you in just a little bit, but let's give you some live now looks inside of some of these watch parties there in West Palm Beach, Florida. You can see the excitement growing, building in that room. They are monitoring this in real time, as we are as well. Also there in Washington, D.C. at the Kamala HQ, the headquarters on the campus of Howard University, her alma mater. We're monitoring it all very, very closely. But also the race for the White House, other props coming up. We're going to have more on some of the down ballot races, some of those measures, amendments in place, and what they mean across this country. We'll have that and much more here on Live Now from Fox after this. All right, we'll back in here to our election night coverage on Live Now from Fox. I'm the host, Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. I do want to give you a couple Live Now looks there in Washington, D.C. at the Kamala Harris watch party taking place on the campus of Howard University, and also in West Palm Beach, Florida. You can see just some of the excitement in the eyes of some of these viewers just approaching midnight on the East Coast. All right, we're also monitoring the latest inside some of these different polling locations, some of these tabulation centers, including in Gwinnett County in Georgia, as we're hearing from Brad Raffensperger talking about potentially an insurmountable lead for the former President Donald Trump, but they will continue on late into the night there. All right, let's talk more about the race for the White House, but other amendments, proposals on the table in different states. Let's bring in right now my colleague Christina Evans. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. Break it all down for me. What are we seeing in some of these votes and some of these props around the country?
Absolutely, Andy Mack. So again, right now in the Live Now Social Center, I want to show you what things are looking like from my vantage point. We're keeping up with some of those storylines that you may not see on the regular news. This is some stuff that we're seeing on social media. And when it comes to social media, you have to talk about some of those conversations that pertain to abortion. Let's go ahead and take a look here on the screen. You can see this race call for the Associated Press. Voters in Maryland did accept a ballot measure to enshrine protection for abortion in the state's constitution. Now, this is a big deal because Marylanders did vote to protect reproductive rights. Abortion is already legal there in the state, but by approving the amendment, voters have made it extremely difficult for lawmakers in the future to pass a law that could limit reproductive care without violating the state constitution. Now, we all know that with some of these younger voters, again, with Gen Z and other places, abortion has been a huge measure that they have been following. I want to show you another one that we have. Here is a post on X from Fox 5 New York. New York voters also passed Proposition 1 in their state. This meant that the amendment is designed to protect abortion rights and other civil liberties that will now be enshrined as well in the state's constitution. This is all according to the Associated Press. Some of this news coming out. The final state that I want to hit on right now when it pertains to abortion, voters in Colorado have also approved a constitutional amendment to enshrine abortion protection there in their state as well. So it's important here for Colorado. This measure did win the necessary 55% of the vote to pass, and it is already a regional hub as well for abortion access in that part of the country, because many folks who do end up traveling there if abortion is banned in their state. So again, on social media, we've been seeing reactions to this storyline as folks are finding out if their state will enshrine abortion protection in the Constitution. Happening now, we know, in 3 states, New York, Maryland, and Colorado. But we are continuing to track stories just like this on our social media pages. Make sure you follow us on Live Now Fox. It's on all platforms, including TikTok, where we have been continuing to keep you updated with some of the other storylines that we're following and seeing there online.
All right, thank you so much, Christina. So important for so many people, and we're glad you shined the light on some of these propositions as well. We appreciate your time doing a great job back there in the social media center.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andy.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. Let's continue on and let's give you a wrap up of some of what we're seeing in terms of some of those propositions. The Amendment 79 in Colorado in favor, yes, the right to abortion. So we're following it very, very closely. A significant portion, over 1,300,000 voting in favor of that. Also in New York in Proposal 1, talking about equal protection. 3 million people cast the ballot, some 63 to 37 in favor of that. And also the right to abortion in Maryland. Coming back to that question one more time. Question 1 for it is almost 2 million people casting their ballot, a significant margin in terms of this there in Maryland. All right, so we're following the latest here on Live Now from Fox in terms of all of this, the race for the White House and much, much more. I do want to talk about another West Coast state that was recently called for Vice President Kamala Harris. Right here, you can see Oregon going in favor of her. So a blue West Coast, not unusual, not surprising as well, but Harris being called there for Oregon. All right, let's continue on because we're talking about different tabulation centers, different votes being tallied across the country. We're having Live Now looks inside of different locations. This one, I believe, in Harris County, Texas. Let's bring in right now to the conversation for more on it. We want to bring in Chris Mann, the director at at the Center for Election Innovation and Research. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox on this election night. It feels like we're having a pretty smooth election night. What is your focus? What are you seeing around the country in terms of the tabulation, in terms of these votes being counted?
I think we've had a remarkably smooth election day and all the period up to it, with early voting going remarkably well. We haven't really seen any problems, looking very carefully around the country for any potential issues. The only things we've seen are the kinds of things that we expect. We had a polling place open late in Maricopa County, Arizona, because the person who was supposed to unlock the door forgot the key in the morning. We had a few places around the country where they had technology glitches in the morning, and that led to lines, but all of those were quickly resolved. Of course, we have had some extraordinarily unusual events. The bomb threats that the FBI has identified as coming from foreign actors, very likely from Russia, that disrupted voting in Georgia and led to polling place delays. There were similar threats made via social media in other states that were quickly dismissed and didn't interrupt voting. And as we get into the counting, things have gone remarkably smoothly. Probably the most high-profile event happened in Milwaukee, where they had to start over with counting. It was clearly a mistake, but in my opinion, they handled it exactly right. They discovered the mistake and they were transparent about it. They talked to the Republicans, they talked to the Democrats, and they decided to start over so that everybody knew the process worked from beginning to end.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania. So right now, as we look at the electoral map, we're focusing on two states that haven't been called on the East Coast right now. We're looking at specifically Georgia, which has, I should say, Chris, 91% of the votes tabulated right now. Trump with just under a 3% lead in that state. Still 9% of the votes to be tallied. But really what I'm curious to ask you about is Pennsylvania. We still got 23% of the votes to be counted in Pennsylvania, and Donald Trump's lead appears to be increasing. How are votes tabulated in Pennsylvania? What's the rules? What's the procedures? And how quickly could they get their process done this morning?
It is going to take them a while. So the key thing to know about Pennsylvania is they are one of the few states that are not allowed to do anything with mail ballots until this morning, until Election Day. So they get those mail ballots. They can't check the voter signature. They can't check that information to make sure it's a valid ballot. They can't take it out of the envelope. They can't even begin the counting process. All of that checking to make sure that the ballot is valid is the longest part. It's the part we want people to be careful about. And so that's why it's going to take a while. They are going to be much better than 2020. There are fewer ballots, and they have made changes. But election officials, Democrats and Republicans all across the state of Pennsylvania, asked the legislature to allow them to start, like almost every other state does, a day or several days before election day, before today. And that didn't happen. The legislature didn't make that change. So they're going to be counting all the way through the night. Through tomorrow, possibly into Thursday. Different folks are estimating when they'll be done at different times. But they started way behind everybody, so they're playing catch up. Election officials all over that state are going as fast as they can, but it's going to take them a while.
All right, that is very good to know, and good protocols in place to make sure that all these votes are counted. I do want to go back to what you mentioned about what was happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, those 30,000 votes that needed to be counted once more just due to a snafu, as one of the city commissioners talking about it earlier on today. And I do want to ask you just about the transparency, because we did see Senator Ron Johnson come down to that facility as well. How important is that to make sure that people are aware of what's going on? A human error can happen, but they can remedy it very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, election officials spend a lot of time preparing for this, but we're talking about thousands of people, tens of thousands of people running elections, doing the counting. They don't do this all the time. Mistakes are going to happen. When they found that mistake and being totally transparent about it, look, you can't undo a mistake, but mistakes happen in life. We all know that. So that transparency to stop, go back to the beginning, check all the machines, seal everything up, and then start over again so that there aren't any questions about those ballots. Best thing to do.
So, Chris, I got to ask you, misinformation has become a staple somewhat as we've been tracking this election and how the votes are tabulated. What do you want people to know about misinformation, and what do you want people to know about some of the common misconceptions people have about how these votes are tallied?
So the first thing to remember is that the reason it's taking a while is that elections are close, right? States that are not close for presidency or other races that are not close, you all can call that, decision desk can call that very quickly. We can know who's going to win. When it's going to be close, we got to wait longer. But the ballots are actually being counted faster than ever before, using technology to do it accurately. Every state after Election Day, so we keep talking about these results, but these are unofficial results. Before they become official, they will be audited, they will be checked. In every state, they go through a rigorous process before those official results are certified, so that we can trust that those final results are really the results that are out there. You know, in terms of misinformation, what I would say is if somebody's telling you something and it's really what you want to hear, be a little skeptical of it.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant.
Well, that is a good advice for people moving forward. My question is a little bit of a piggyback of what Austin just asked you as you're talking about disinformation, misinformation moving forward. What are you looking at over the next several days? Because some of these states, like Pennsylvania, which could be the common denominator for the race for the White House, will be counting for tonight into tomorrow, potentially over the next several days. What are you looking at over the next several days? What are you focusing on?
The biggest thing that concerns me is actors out there, particularly foreign actors, that may be just trying to rile up anger on both sides and disrupt, you know, how we operate as Americans and our trust in this electoral process, in the political process. And so, you know, if something is out there and it's really getting you fired up, that's the most important place to take a step back and ask yourself, is this person just trying to make me angry? Is this social media post or wherever you're hearing it, is this just where something that's trying to wind me up? And that's the most dangerous piece of misinformation over the next couple of days. This process, we knew what was going to happen. We've known for months that this is going to play out. Pennsylvania was going to take a long time. Wisconsin will take a little bit of time, not quite as long as Pennsylvania probably, maybe a few other states. But be patient and don't fall for those folks who are just trying to rile you up.
In general, Chris, I got to ask you, does it seem like the process is moving quicker this time around compared to 2020, and is that because of all of those mail-in ballots 4 years ago?
It's moving quicker for a number of reasons. One, we're not in the middle of a pandemic, so election workers don't have to social distance and all those other things that got in the way of moving quickly. Election officials learn lesson from every election, so they have gotten better. They've changed their procedures. They got more people, trained them to do things a little quicker, a little faster, all of those things. But yeah, a big factor is that there are fewer mail ballots. They have those extra steps to process them, especially in those places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, where they don't get the head start of being able to do that before Election Day.
All right, very good. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It's glad, I think many people are, that it is going smooth here on Election Day, very critical election. I appreciate your time. We're continuing to follow the latest, but thanks again for joining us here on a busy day.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, let's continue on covering all the latest here on Live Now from Fox on this Election Day. As we do want to get to more race calls in terms of the race, the push for the White House. Another one out of New Mexico in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris, 52-46. The check mark next to her name, those 5 electoral votes going to her. And I also want to talk about Oregon one more time. Harris getting that state as well, 8 electoral votes for her over the former President Donald Trump. All right, we're also monitoring, like we've talked about time and time again, that balance of power in the Senate. We do have a new live pick right up now in Pennsylvania of this in terms of a watch party for Dave McCormick, the Republican in that state. And I do want to put up just this, a post of what's coming up in terms of this race in Pennsylvania over incumbent Bob Casey. It is a very tight margin, but a 2-point lead right now at this point for Dave McCormick. The AP has not called it yet, but it is getting closer to the finish line. 80% of the votes have been counted at this point, 2.7 million to 2.6 million in terms of that. All right, we're following all the latest here on this Live Now from Fox. Let's line away for another quick welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox here on this election night. I'm the host, Andy Mack. We appreciate you joining us as we approach midnight on the East Coast as we are getting closer and closer in terms of that call for the White House. I do want to put up just this, another state going in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris, this being Virginia right now. The AP calling this in favor of her, 51% to 47%. And you can see the electoral amounts on that left side portion of your screen. The 270 needed to win, 230 right now in favor of the former President Donald Trump, 205. It's going to be a very, very close one in terms of this. So we're following that very, very closely. I do want to give you another race call, a call that we've really already seen the speaker for this, the senator out of Texas, Ted Cruz, the AP finally calling this one. It is a sizable margin right now at this point, 54% to 44%, some 5.25 million votes for Ted Cruz in that state. We've already seen him speak to supporters there on the ground in that state. So I just wanted to give you an update on what we're seeing in terms of that state in Texas. But we're following all the latest here on this on Live Now from Fox. Let's continue. Let's bring in my colleague Austin Westfall, because we did see Ted Cruz being called, but Virginia going for Harris, and we're expecting to hear from Dave McCormick potentially in a little bit. We do have a live picture of that. Give me a breakdown of what we're seeing in terms of the Electoral College. What are we looking at right now, Austin?
So let's start off, before we get to the Electoral College, let's start off with the Senate map, because Texas going to Cruz, that is going to matter in the grand scheme of things. As things sit right now, Republicans have 49 out of the 50 seats that they need in order to get a split in the Senate. If they get 50-50, then that means that the vice president would be the tiebreaker. That means if J.D. Vance becomes the vice president, he would give the edge to the Republicans in the Senate. If Tim Walz becomes the vice president, that means the Democrats would become the party in power in the Senate. But right now, there are so many, Andy, so many of these blue seats that are competitive. They only need one more. They only need one more. The Republicans need one more seat to win in order to get to what they need to get to. So, and what we'll say here is Republicans do have 50. So yes, if they win the presidency, what that's going to mean is that they are going to control the Senate. If they get one more, that's going to confirm the fact that they've gotten the Senate. So,
yeah. Let me cut you off real quick, because that was a great breakdown. But we do see Colin Allred now at the microphone after Ted Cruz secured that victory. Let's put this up one more time just to give you a sense of what's going on. Ted Cruz taking it over him. Now the concession speech coming from Colin Allred there in Texas. Let's listen in to him and what he has to say here on Live Now from Fox.
It's becoming rarer and rarer. I was inspired to run partly because of what I saw on January 6th. What happened when people lie about a free and fair election because they weren't happy with the results. I said then, and I'll say it now, you can't just be a patriot when your side wins. So tonight, we didn't win, but we will continue to be patriots. Isn't that right? I want to thank every single Texan, every single American who got involved in this race, but especially the folks who knocked on doors, who made phone calls, who gave whatever they could to this campaign. You know, I come from a family where we didn't have a lot of money. And so I know what it means when somebody sends in $5 or $10. It's an act of hope. And I appreciate them. And I really especially want to thank all the incredibly brave Texas women who've come forward and told their stories. Amanda Zarowski, Kate Cox, Lauren Miller, Dr. Austin Denard, Taylor Edwards, I could keep going. There are so many brave Texas women who've told their stories. And Allie and I will never forget them, and we will never stop fighting to overturn this abortion ban here in Texas. I carry 3 little rocks with me that my sons picked out on the playground. They represent my 2 kids and my wife, Allie. My boys are little. They're 3 and 5. I haven't seen them as much as I'd like to, and for someone who grew up not knowing their father, that's a big deal to me. So I want to say a special thank you to my family, to my mother and father-in-law who have done so much child care.
Yes.
To the folks who mean the most to me.
I don't need to, I never do.
I ran for my boys, and I'm going to keep fighting for my boys' future, and for every Texas kid's future. And I hope you all will too. There's a quote from Churchill that's been kicking around in my head that I'll probably mess up. But it said that courage is rightly esteemed as the first of human qualities, because as has been said, it's the quality that guarantees all others. You have to have courage. It took courage, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but it took courage for me to come from a single-parent household without a lot of money to the United States Congress. It took courage for these, thank you. It took courage for these Texas women to come forward and talk about the most difficult moment of their lives in front of thousands of people. It took courage for each and every one of you and everyone who got involved in this campaign to, even though we haven't won here in Texas in some time, to believe in this election and to put everything you had into it. And it's going to take courage for whatever comes tomorrow and the day after. This country is worth fighting for. Understand that. This state is worth fighting for. We are a great country. Nobody needs to make us great again. We are great because we are good. And we are good because that's who we are as a people. And so I don't want to see anybody putting their heads down. I want you to put your shoulders back and your head up and walk out of here tall that you participated in an American election. That's what we do. Because in this country, we don't settle our differences in the streets. We don't settle it with violence. We settle it at the ballot box. And if we don't win, then we dust ourselves off and we come back the next time. Okay? I don't know what's going to happen in any of the other races around the country. But I know this. It's going to require patriots like all of you and people all across our state and our country to stay engaged. This 250-year project of ours is one that is very tenuous. Every generation of Americans is responsible for keeping it going for another generation. We are not going to be the ones who drop the baton. And whatever happens in this election, I want you all to remember who we are. Don't ever lose sight of it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that it's not who we are. And I want to thank you again. God bless you. God bless Texas. And may God continue to bless the greatest country in the history of the world, the United States of America. Thank you so much.
All right, you're just listening in there. Call it all red, slightly dejected, but he says he will continue to fight for the people of Texas there, as this going in favor of Senator Ted Cruz, the incumbent, earning that battle, a very hard-fought battle in Texas. Of course, I just want to put this up again here on Live Now from Fox on election night of what has come to the conclusion. Ted Cruz there by 10 points, 84% counted. The AP calling it in favor of him. I do want to take you out to another Senate race in terms of Minnesota, as Amy Klobuchar, the incumbent there in Minnesota, taking that race. The check check mark next to her name over Royce White, nearing 1 million votes in favor of her there in Minnesota as well. So we're following that very, very closely. We're also monitoring several different shots, including in Pennsylvania right now, an election update coming out from there in just a matter of moments. They've had one nearly every hour. Also a live look in Westlake, Ohio, I believe, at Dave McCormick, Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick's rally there. So we'll take you out to these in just a little bit. But let's sign away for a quick 2-minute break. All right, welcome back in here to Live and Now from Fox, approaching midnight on the East Coast. The ballots will continue to be tabulated across the country. I do want to put up just some of these Live Now looks. One at Howard University, the site of this Kamala Harris watch party. You can see two very different vibes there in Washington, D.C., but also in West Palm Beach, Florida, the site of former President Donald Trump's watch party. So plenty to get to in terms of all of these races. For the White House, we're hearing race calls minute by minute. We're taking you as soon as the AP, the Associated Press, does call those. We'll bring it to you in real time as soon as they happen. We do want to talk about the balance of power, though, right now in terms of the most critical state in this race. That is Pennsylvania. I want to put up this one. Dave McCormick holding a lead over Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat at this point right now, just under 2 points in favor of Dave McCormick, the Republican right now. Let's bring in Austin Westfall to give us a breakdown, the latest on this balance of power in terms of the upper Congress, upper state of Congress being the Senate. What do you make? What are we learning?
It's 11:58.
We're learning a lot. And as you just showed on your screen, Andy, we're talking about McCormick being up by roughly 2 points over Bob Casey. Bob Casey, an incumbent in Pennsylvania, 82% of the vote has been tallied. We're also seeing some results in from Montana as well. Tim Sheehy, so far, outpacing with 14% of the vote in so far, a legacy Democrat in Montana in John Tester. Still a lot of votes to count, but nonetheless, Sheehy has a wide margin, at least in the initial phases of this. So let's pull up our map. Let's look at the balance of power right now. This is the important number. Republicans, they've got 50 right now. That's what they needed in order to get half. That means if Trump wins the presidency, J.D. Vance becomes the vice president. That means he's the tiebreaker. That means Republicans would have control of the Senate in that scenario. But as you can see here, there are still lots of these seats up for grabs, and they are in competitive states, Andy. So we're looking at states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Montana. These are all states where Democrats are facing tough challenges, and as you can see, they're all leaning red right now. So it's looking like it's very, very difficult to imagine a path where the Democrats maintain control of the Senate. I think we have Rich Rubino standing by. He's somebody that I've been speaking to over the weeks. We've been talking about what the most consequential races are in the Senate. We've been discussing how this thing could play out and that it was likely that the Republicans might gain control of the Senate. But I think Rich, and we'll have him on in a moment here,
yeah,
I think...
before we get to that, Austin, I just want to cut you off a little bit because I believe we're just seeing Amy Klobuchar at the microphone. Of course, she did take that, the incumbent Democrat there. We did see her just a little bit here on Live Now from Fox. As you can see, she might be stepping away from the podium, so we're going to take you out to that in just a second. But Austin, let's get back to your comments because let's bring in Rich Rubino right now because Amy Klobuchar clearly wrapping up that speech. She did earn the title there in that Senate seat, retaining that seat over Royce Wine. Let's bring in Rich Rubino right now, political analyst. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Austin was breaking it down very great about the balance of power, what we're seeing right now. What do we make of the landscape on this election night, Rich?
Couple things. It's very competitive right now, and Republicans seems to be having an advantage. A state like Pennsylvania, I think that the thought process was that Senator Casey probably would eke out another term. He was elected in 2006. He actually defeated incumbent Rick Santorum, and then he was reelected in 2012, reelected in 2018. Now it looks like there's a possibility he may lose that seat. Ohio, that was a state that Sherrod Brown had to run ahead of the national ticket. He had to run ahead of Vice President Harris, and he had to distance himself from the party. In many respects, he tried to hug President on issues like President Trump, that is, and issues like trade. This is a state that the last two elections went 8 points for Donald Trump. This time around, it looks like he was not able to do that, and he apparently lost that race. Montana is an interesting race because Steve Daines is the chairman of the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, and he is the other senator from Montana, and he's really made this kind of his flagship race, defeating his colleague from Montana, John Tester. It's a state that won about 16 points last time for Donald Trump, so he's really somewhat of a survivor, having been elected and reelected there.
And I'd like to remind the audience, why are we talking about this so much? Why is the balance of power in the Senate critical to how powerful a president we're talking about?
Well, in order for the president to get his legislation passed, it has to pass both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. There are other things presidents can do unilaterally. There are executive agreements. He can negotiate with other countries, and he can certainly negotiate with other countries, and he can certainly sign executive orders. But for the most part, he needs the compliance of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And at some point in the United States Senate, there might be a movement by Donald Trump to try to get rid of the filibuster if they have all Republicans agreeing on that. The filibuster essentially makes it harder for legislation to get through because you need 60 votes really instead of 50.
Yeah, and let me ask you about that because you mentioned some of the things that could be in place if it is a Republican White House, but also a red House and Senate. How consequential could that be?
Very consequential. It could be very much that they're going to be butting heads. You'll have Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries from New York, center-left Democrat, taking on the Republicans, Republican Majority Leader. It could be Rick Scott, who was just handily reelected tonight, the senator from Florida, or it could interestingly be John Thune. John Thune was a senator from South Dakota, and in 2004, he was elected against Tom Daschle. Tom Daschle was the incumbent Democrat, and Tom Daschle was at the time the Senate Majority Leader, and part of the message he had was that he could do more for South Dakota as a leader of the United States Senate than a freshman senator. Now we have a scenario where probably the front runner is John Thune, and John Thune himself could become the majority leader of the United States Senate. So one of those two, those are, of course, the case of John Thune, he's very much kind of an establishment Republican. It'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump is elected, how he will deal with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is obviously demonstrably popular with the conservative base and certainly with Republicans in South Dakota, but he really needs to get to use Congress in order to get any legislation passed. And it'll be interesting schism between the establishment Republican Party, Mitch McConnell and John Thune, and kind of the insurrectionist new right, if you will, of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
We're still awaiting some pertinent race calls in battleground states on the presidential race side. We'll get to that in a moment, Rich, but I just want to ask you in general, if history is any indicator, how long could it take before we know the balance of power in the lower chamber, the House?
It usually takes a long, assuming it's a close race like this, it can take a long time because there are a lot of races that are going to be very close. The state of Maine, for example, they use instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting. So they have one congressional race in the 2nd District of Maine, which will be very competitive. That could take a while for them to count, but there are usually a couple of congressional districts that it can take 2-3 weeks to go until they finally have a winner of that race. If it's going to be very close. I think that obviously the races that are close, they're close for a reason because they're usually in very competitive congressional districts. A lot of those are in upstate New York or in the suburbs of New York City, as well as many of them out in California as well. So my guess is are probably going to be about 10 seats that are probably going to take a while until we actually find out who the winner is going to be, and there's probably going to be 1 or 2 seats. They might not find out till January.
All right, it's going to be a while for that. Some of the states we've heard been called already. Some other ones are going to be taking quite some time. And one that might take quite some time is the Senate race in Pennsylvania. I want to put up this just as we continue to get votes in here. This one in Pennsylvania, Dave McCormick going against Bob Casey, a 3-term incumbent. We've already seen Sherrod Brown potentially lose his battle in Ohio to Bernie Moreno. What do we make of some of these flips? Because some of these guys have been in Congress for quite some time. Dave McCormick right now a 2-point lead. What do we make of this, Rich, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and also Montana with John Tester potentially losing? What do we make of some of these flips?
What we're making of it, I think, is that kind of Democrats who are in, and not the case of Pennsylvania, but certainly the case of Ohio and Montana, there's no longer split ticket voting. It used to be that you could elect a president from one party and then a member of the House of Representatives or a senator from the other party. And this is particularly true with Democrats. There's only 5 Democrats right now who represent congressional districts that were won by Donald Trump. And there's a very strong possibility that 4 of those 5 congressional districts at the end of the night could go toward the Republicans. There are just very few people that were so bifurcated that actually split their vote. I think Sherrod Brown, he's certainly won in the past, going back 2006, 2012, 2018, all which were years that were advantageous for the Democrats. 2024 apparently is not advantageous for the Democrats. And it's something that I think will certainly, it certainly has deleterious effects on Sherrod Brown running for re-election. He was very much a kind of unique Democrat, very much anti-free trade, someone who's very much of a populist. In the case of Pennsylvania, very interested because I thought Senator Casey was going to be the favorite. I thought he probably was going to pull it out, but obviously there was a upswell and there was certainly probably some coattails, if you will, by President Trump. Every time Trump held a rally, just about, he brought Mr. McCormick up on the stage and would present him and say, "This is a Senate nominee. We want you to vote for him as well." And it looks like, all things being equal, that's apparently what had happened in the Keystone State.
All right, we're going to get back to you, Rich, in just a little bit. Thank you so much for your time, but let's quickly shift gears and talk about that in Pennsylvania right here on Live Now from Fox. We're seeing stepping up to the podium more election officials, their city commissioners in that state, a key battleground state in Philadelphia. Let's listen in to what they have to say here on Live Now.
We will not stop until we are finished. Thank you.
About turnout? Numbers of turnout.
We still have in-person results coming in, so it's still hard to predict turnout. But what we do know is of the 202,000 mail ballots that we've received, not all of those will count because some of them are unsigned or undated. But we will have another update of mail ballots later this evening, and we're going to continue updating the in-person results as they're coming in.
Do you know what divisions are still outstanding?
Well, again, we will report them as they come in. Again, election night, yes, a lot of logistical challenges. You got everybody just receiving all the results. We will post them up on our website. Thank you.
Sorry, could you give those numbers once more? It was a little faint back. I apologize.
Do you want to read these? Oh, sure. So our mail results, 202,713. The polling place numbers were 437,427. And our posted mail results that we have on the website is 165,000. And again, our website is vote.phila.gov/results. And we will post them on a rolling basis, and we will continue until we stop. Until we're done. Thank you.
All right, an update there from officials in Philadelphia talking about this, how they'll post updates in a rolling basis, as this is one of the most critical states. Live picture right now, courtesy of the AP, of what we're continuing to follow. Dave McCormick there, up by, as the margin maybe slimmed a little bit by this latest batch, 49.4 to 48.1 in terms of that. The U.S. Senate race there, the incumbent Bob Casey, an uphill battle against Dave McCormick. All right, we're following this very, very closely. I do want to give you some race calls really quickly before we get to an interesting one in Hawaii. This one going in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris, the check mark next to her name. 4 electoral votes as it just closed. Polls just closed on that side. Also, the U.S. Senate there in Hawaii going for Mazie Hirano. So that is in terms of the Senate in Hawaii. Just wanted to bring you that. And we're also following right now in Nebraska. Deb Fischer taking officially the check mark over Dan Osborne, 51.5%. 48.5%. So Deb Fischer, the Republican there. And Austin, I'm going to bring you into the conversation right now because this was a big one. Not a surprising one, but a big one. Can you talk about the meaning behind this?
This was a surprisingly competitive race. The independent in this race did put up a fight. Nonetheless, we are seeing that this seat is going to stay red. Yeah. What that means is that we now have 51 Republicans confirmed to have control of the Senate. 51 means no matter what, it doesn't matter who wins the presidency, it doesn't matter who's vice president, it doesn't matter who is the tiebreaker in the Senate, the Republicans are going to control the upper chamber. There is still a question as to how much control they'll have. How many more seats can they pick up? There's still some battlegrounds. Montana, that's going to be a steep challenge for John Tester in Montana. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I'll just cycle through these really quick here before we bring in Rich Rubino. So as far as the Senate goes in Wisconsin, 78% of the votes have been counted, and we're looking at just over a 2% advantage for Eric Hovde. Talking about Michigan, that's Mike Rogers versus Alyssa Slotkin. Rogers right now has just over a 4-point lead. Not even half of the votes tallied yet in Michigan. The final one I'll tease out here is Pennsylvania. As you were just talking about there, Andy, McCormick right now has just over a point lead, 84% of those votes tallied. So the question is no longer which party will gain control of the Senate. The question is, how much control will Republicans have?
All right, very good, Austin. Thank you so much. As you just heard, GOP will control the Senate, but we want to take you out to a Senate seat that did go blue today, and that is in California. As we're following this, as Adam Schiff taking this one over Steve Garvey, the famous Dodgers player, Padres player. He is currently at the podium making this concession speech there in the Golden State of California. Let's listen in to what he has to say.
Because you have truly been the wind beneath our wings. And we love you for that. But there's one thing, I see a little blue in the audience tonight. And I assume you're at the wrong party, but I think that you're still celebrating that Dodger World Championship. You know, winning the World Championship for this 24 team was amazing. So proud of the boys, fighting at all times, playing when they're injured and didn't feel well, and then winning in Game 5 at Yankee Stadium. If you can't win at home, winning at Yankee Stadium is the next best thing. And of course, the '81 World Championship, and you remember the great infield of Say and Russell and Lopes and myself and Dusty Baker. And you're all going, I remember those guys.
All right, Steve Garvey, even though he did have to concede, he was noting the win by the Dodgers, so maybe a little bit of a silver lining for him in terms of that. So we're following that, and just as we said, it's Adam Schiff stepping up to the podium as he did take this Senate seat in California, moving chambers from the House to the Senate. Listen in to his victory speech here on Live Now.
And appreciate our different backgrounds and cultures.
I've seen it firsthand. From the first day I launched this campaign to the visits I've made to nearly every corner of the Golden State. From meeting with local leaders in the border community of Calexico to seeing the restoration of redwoods north of Willits, I've met the most amazing people all across California. I've listened to your concerns, I've heard your fears, I've shared your hopes, and imagined the future that you want to see for yourselves and for your children. And because of this, every day I woke up energized and hopeful. In Bakersfield, I met with entrepreneurs who turned their passion into successful small businesses that had lifted up their communities. In Salinas, I heard from farm workers who toiled in the fields from sunrise to sundown, rain or shine, to ensure that families across the country had food on their tables. In Oakland, I felt the joy and energy of an early morning service at the Allen Temple Baptist Church. In Merced, I sat down with college students and heard about the careers they were building for themselves. In Lakewood, I saw firsthand the hard and rewarding labor of child care providers. I witnessed their patience, their kindness, and the love that they bring to their work. Our state has its struggles, like every state, but none are insurmountable because we are the Golden State and we get big things done. And my promise to you is that I'm going to deliver on day one, week one, year one, and keep on delivering for this amazing state. Because together there is no challenge that we cannot overcome. We leave no community behind. We do not stop, we do not rest until all our citizens have a safe place to live, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, safe neighborhoods to raise their children, good hospitals, clinics, and health care, and the best public schools in the world. In pursuit of this dream for all our people, I will not rest, California. In the Senate, I will be a champion and voice for all Californians, whether you voted for me or not, whether you live in the big city or a small county, whether you grew up here or came to America searching for a better life. We are going to build more affordable housing so that you aren't forced to choose between your rent and putting food on the table. We are going to ensure that our fellow neighbors do not have to sleep on the street. We are going to help hardworking families by lowering costs. We are going to fight tooth and nail to protect abortion access and defend democracy and our freedoms. We are going to bring resources and jobs back to the Golden State to create opportunity for all Californians. We're going to fight on behalf of our dream workers, our farm workers, our immigrant families, so they no longer have to live in the shadows. We are going to protect our planet, fight climate change, and bring good-paying green jobs here to California. It is a big task, I know, but we can do it because we are going to do it together. I am determined to fight every single day on behalf of this great state and its great people, and I am so thankful for your trust and your support, and I can't wait to do this job with you together. I want to thank my incredible wife, Eve, and yes, we are Adam and Eve. My kids, Lexi and Eli. Lexi's boyfriend, Eric, gets a shout out. My brother, Daniel, and his wife, Amy. My brother, David, and his family. My nieces and my nephews, and of course, the one the world revolves around, baby Maya. I could not have done this without your endless love and support, and it's so wonderful to get to celebrate with you tonight. Eve, I don't know where to begin, but this Adam would be lost without this Eve. I love you, and I'm grateful to you for your strength and love. Lexi and Eli, being your dad is my favorite job in the world. I love you, and I am so proud of you. And I also want to acknowledge my mother and father, Cheryl and Ed Schiff. While they're no longer with us, I wouldn't be standing here but for their love and guidance and support. My father lived to be 96. He passed earlier this year. And I so wish he could be here with us tonight. Dad, give Mom a hug and tell her I hope she's still not upset with me for not being a doctor. I also want to thank every volunteer and supporter who made calls, sent texts, knocked on doors, and chipped in a few bucks, because your hard work not only made this Senate race possible, but you are going to deliver the House of Representative majority to Hakeem Jeffries tonight. And I want to thank Nancy Pelosi, the greatest of all time, the most incredible speaker in our history, for her friendship, her mentorship, her leadership. There was no one who stood more in the breach defending our democracy than Nancy Pelosi, and I thank you. We set out to build the largest grassroots campaign in California history, and I think we hit the mark. To my wonderful staff, I thank you. You are all dedicated public servants who've committed countless hours, nights, weekends to this effort, and this victory is also yours. To my wonderful, wonderful constituents in the 30th Congressional District who have supported me for over 25 years, I cannot thank you enough for your confidence in the honor of representing you. I hope that I have served you well and made you proud. And to my new constituents all over the state, whether you voted for me or not, I am committed to being a champion for every Californian in every corner of this wonderful state. California, I thank you for your trust. I am grateful to serve as your U.S. Senator. Now, let's get to work. Thank you, California. Thank you, everyone. God bless this state and country. Thank you so much.
That was just Adam Schiff there alongside his wife, Eve, after securing the Senate seat left by the late Dianne Feinstein. So you can see a happy Adam Schiff there on there, but also talking about how his hope for Hakeem Jeffries to be the majority leader in terms of the House of Representatives. Of course, we're following that, the latest here on Live Now from Fox in terms of that Senate seat. I do want to talk more about another race call we have in terms of Nebraska and what they do it. Another electoral vote going in the tally for Vice President Kamala Harris as she secured the District 2 vote, 84% coming in. So it's 230 to 210 right now, just 20 minutes past the top of the hour, 12:20 a.m. Eastern time. So we're following the latest here on all of this on Live Now from Fox. We're going to get out to more of this in terms of the race for the White House, a live look there in West Palm Beach, Florida. As you can see, some of the excitement, some of the vibes on this hand. The microphone still set up in the very front of this. I don't know how soon we could see any speakers, but also at Howard University on that campus, the alma mater of Vice President Kamala Harris. We'll continue to follow the latest with this race for the White House. I'm Andy Mack. We're back up. right, welcome back into Live Now from Fox. Just past midnight on the East Coast, and we're learning now from the Harris campaign, of course, potentially some uncertainty or turbulence within that Harris campaign, despite what we're seeing on the campus there at Howard University at this watch party as we're continuing to follow the race for the White House. Let's bring in right now to the conversation to learn more about what we're hearing, what we're reporting, what Fox is reporting, Christina Evans. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. Break it all down. What are we hearing, and maybe are there some nervous feelings inside that Harris camp?
Yeah, Andy, I think you'd be right when you say the nervous feelings maybe are going out throughout the Harris camp. Again, I want to show you, again, inside of our social studio here at Live Now, we've been keeping a close eye on all of those storylines that are popping up online, and this is one of them. This memo going out to several Harris campaign members as well. What you're looking at right now is a tweet from Nandita Bose. She's a reporter with Reuters, but this is a screenshot of an email that was sent out. Harris's campaign chair, Jen O'Malley-Dillon, sent this message out and stressing patience and resolve. This was a message that was sent to all campaign staff, and it was also meant for some who are outside of the campaign, who are hopefuls for the Democratic Party, trying to give a sense of hope. She does say in this email that as we've known all along, this is a razor-thin race. So right now, the Democratic Party and the Harris campaign is planning on waiting out the blue wall of states. We know this is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those are the states that they're calling to be Harris's path to victory. But right now, none of those states have been called as of yet. The only battleground state that's been called is, of course, North Carolina, but those blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, have not been called, and this is what the Harris campaign is now holding out for. Again, making this memo known on social media, as well as sending it out directly to those campaign people who are working for Vice President Kamala Harris, saying at the end of it, Jen O'Malley-Dillon saying, get some sleep. We're looking forward to tomorrow, because they don't anticipate these results until the early morning hours. So, Andy, that's what we're seeing right now on social media as it pertains to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Yeah, if the results continue to go the way they do, I don't know how much sleep those people within the campaign will be able to get. Christina, thank you, though, for that great reporting, as always.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Let's continue on discussing the latest in that turbulence within potentially that camp as well. I do want to put up this tweet from Jackie Heinrich talking about this here on Live Now from Fox, talking about 3 sources close to Harris are expressing concern over Harris's path to victory. It may be too narrow to overcome. One source at the Harris Friends and Family Party says, quote, her path is so narrow that she is not doing what she needs to do in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The exit polls I saw hours ago are all accurate. They need to subtly outperform those. Don't believe that will happen. Asked about this, a second source close to Harris told me, quote, I 100% agree. The path is very difficult to victory. His numbers are higher than expected in counties where he should be losing by larger margins in Pennsylvania and Michigan. A third source close to the campaign said, I think we're losing this. Hearing word that Harris may be coming to Howard University soon, but not for another hour. So that's reporting there from Fox's Jackie Heinrich about what we're learning with this race for the White House. Not a lot of call. North Carolina was called for Trump, but Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin yet to be called at this point as well. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox. Let's bring in my colleague, Austin Westphal, also political analyst, Rich Rubino, to continue this feeling of what we're hearing from inside of the camps. Rich, I want to ask you, how concerning is it, and how real are these feelings of uncertainty within that camp?
I think it's a lot of uncertainty. It's probably a lot of pessimism within the Harris camp. I think that some of these places specifically, they thought that they were going to do a lot better when some of these counties came in. What's basically happening is that Donald Trump is overperforming. There's still a path, certainly, for Vice President Harris to win, but it's becoming a more and more narrow of a path. And I think that my guess is that there will certainly will not have the election called tonight, but it's becoming extremely, there obviously is a lot of pessimism within the Harris camp right now about the results and what they've seen.
I got to ask you about the blue wall, Rich. So as we look at our map here, the blue wall, that's something that everybody's been discussing ad nauseum. Of course, the blue wall states are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Ever since 1992, these 3 states, they have voted as a unit. Most of the time, they voted blue. In 2016, though, they voted red. Why do these three states tend to vote as a unit? Is there any understanding?
Yes, and they're very similar, although Pennsylvania is not a Midwest state. It's more of a northeastern state. Michigan, Wisconsin, of course, are both Midwestern states. But there are a lot of those, what's a very important constituency, and those are white, blue-collar voters. Many of them are traditionally Democrats. Many of them were Reagan Democrats, but they came back to the Democratic Party, voted for Clinton twice, voted for Barack Obama twice, and then they moved over to Donald Trump. And I think part of that is trade agreements like NAFTA, for example, disproportionately had an effect on some of these counties and some of these parts of these states. As a result, there's been a lot of job losses, and whether it's right or wrong, they blamed it on trade agreements. And those trade agreements essentially had bipartisan support. NAFTA, for example, had Bill Clinton signing it with Bob Dole, Newt Gingrich, Bob Michel in the House and Senate, respectively, getting it through. A lot of Republicans were kind of free trade, laissez-faire Republicans. It didn't really go very well. It didn't bode well in these parts of the country. Now that you have Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump has gotten to the left essentially of the vice president of the Democratic Party on trade, talking about tariffs, a lot of traditional Democrats, independents, conservative Democrats went over and they voted for Donald Trump the first time, and you're seeing that again. It's a problem Democrats have. It's something when Bernie Sanders ran in 2016, he also took very similar positions on issues like trade. And the other thing is that the Republicans do not have the traditional kind of anti-labor rhetoric. For example, J.D. Vance is somebody who is opposed to the idea of right-to-work laws. They've tried to become more and more populist and more friendly to the workers to that respect. And I think that is certainly helping them and boding well in trying to unlock that what really was a hammerlock the Democrats had from 1992 to 2016.
All right, very, very good. I do want to ask you more about Trump and the movement that is behind him. And I want to put up several of these posts here on social media. This one saying there is still no sign of Harris at a rapidly thinning watch party at Howard University, her alma mater. She could be speaking soon to a nearly deserted campus if she does not appear soon. And that is in contrast to what we're seeing now at the Donald Trump party. And I believe we have a post there of him arriving at this Mar-a-Lago, a post, as you can see from the New York Post, saying Donald Trump arrived at Mar-a-Lago election night party there with some of his supporters as well. And Rich, I do want to ask you about something else that was said in that post, in the reporting from Jackie Heinrich, talking about the fact that his numbers, Trump's numbers, are higher than expected in counties where he should be losing by larger margins in Pennsylvania and Michigan. What do we make of that, where Trump is, his numbers are higher than expected in some of the counties there from the Harris campaign and what they were expected? What does that mean?
You know, back in 1982, Tom Bradley, he was the mayor of Los Angeles, and he was running for governor of California. He was African American, and he took polls, and the polls show he would win anywhere from 10 to 15 points. Then people went to the polls, and Tom Bradley landed up losing. And one of the arguments why he lost the race was the so-called Bradley effect, meaning that voters would tell pollsters that they were going to vote for him, and then when they actually got to the polls, they could not vote for an African American. There are other factors as well. For example, Jerry Brown was running for Senate, and his campaign tended to flounder toward the end, and that had a disproportionate effect on Bradley. What I'm saying here is essentially that there might be voters in the suburbs of places like Philadelphia who tell pollsters, because they don't know who the pollster is, it's perhaps not politically correct to say you supported Trump. This is all speculation here, but they could be telling pollsters that they'll vote for Donald, that they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, but once they go in there, the Australian ballot or the secret ballot, if you will, they land up actually voting for Donald Trump. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that Donald Trump's effort, they might just have a better get out the vote effort, and they might have just had a better ground game, and perhaps that ground game was kind of underappreciated, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor.
Let's talk a little bit about Georgia. This is one state, Rich, that we've been focusing in on. And Georgia, it's interesting. Georgia right now has 93% of the votes counted right now. Trump has about a little bit over a 2-point lead over Harris. You've been following races so closely for so long, and you don't work for the Associated Press. That's who's calling these races for us. But when you look at these figures, what do you say about Harris's chances in the Peach State?
It looks very dim. I mean, we don't know, obviously, until we get 100% of turnout. It's obviously very close, but perhaps She did not maximize the votes that she could get in places like Fulton County. It's interesting because her strategy, she actually spent 2 days on the campaign trail just riding through South Georgia, Southwest Georgia, rural parts of Georgia, some of whom were traditionally Republican areas, to try to minimize the damage that they could have in those areas. It looks like it really was for naught. It didn't really have necessarily the effect that they thought it would. They also employed Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton went to many parts of southern Georgia, to traditionally, culturally conservative, the types of people similar to those that Bill Clinton won over in 1992 when he actually won the state. He went out, he tried to get those. It looks like despite what Barack Obama did, despite what Bill Clinton did, despite what Harris did, and despite what Tim Walz did, they seem to be treading water right now. And if they lose Georgia, they certainly would need to take just about all three of those states. But Georgia's a very interesting state. Certainly, it has some very Democratic areas right around Atlanta. You have to maximize your turnout, as well as some of the African American areas toward the southeastern part of the southwestern part of the state. But it's going to be very interesting to see what the final results are going to be in the Peach State.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that, because we're hearing different reports about Gwinnett County and maybe the delayed votes that they're going to kind of tally up there in that county. Talk about maybe some of the areas around Atlanta, because Gwinnett County around Atlanta, how strong are they for Kamala Harris? How important are some of those kind of areas around there going for Harris, and how critical will these be even if they are delayed?
It's a very interesting state. Right around Atlanta, you have areas like, for example, if you keep driving, you run into places like Marietta and Sandy Springs, which was actually, we used to be very Republican. Newt Gingrich was actually represented that area for that area. So it was a very conservative congressional district. But when I say conservative, they're more or less fiscally conservative, but they're kind of socially moderate. And Donald Trump is kind of inhospitable to their ideology. So consequently, a lot of them they now have a Democratic congresswoman, for example. So it's become more and more Democrat. I think this is what we're seeing around the country. This is part of the Trump effect, right? Trump does very well in rural areas of the country. He maximizes his vote, but he tends to falter in some of the suburban areas where Republicans like Ronald Reagan or George H.W. Bush were able to rack up big margins. They feel kind of alien to Donald Trump's kind of new populist type of an ideology. And those are the areas right around, the areas right around very much educated class, places like Marietta, where there's really not much of a Southern accent. Those are the types of places that I think Vice President Harris really thought she could capitalize on.
I got to ask you about Michigan, specifically about Wayne County. We see behind me here, 55% of the votes have been tallied in Wayne County. Right now, Harris has 58% of the vote. If we're going back to the Biden election 4 years ago, Biden won that county with 68% of the vote. Why is this particular county important, Rich? I'm sure you know this. This is one of the largest areas of Arab Americans in the country. Can you tell us about how their vote factors into this election? The Israel-Hamas war has been a major talking point of both campaigns.
Yes, very interesting. We saw Donald Trump the last weekend in a campaign actually going to Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has the largest share of Muslim and Arab American voters per capita. But I think that there has really been a lot in the community have been inflamed. Last time around, Joe Biden won 86% of the Muslim vote. This time around, there was a poll taken by the Center for Islamic American Relations that showed Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate in that community, remember, we're just talking about Muslim Americans, was actually winning a plurality of the vote. It's not that they necessarily liked Jill Stein per se. It's more that they were trying to send a message to Vice President Harris that they wanted there to be an arms embargo, and many of them blamed Joe Biden and Vice President Harris for continuing to send arms to Israel that are used in Gaza. So this really has been a lot of disaffected voters, Muslim voters. Some of them are going to Donald Trump. Some of them will be going to Jill Stein. And some of them are going to certainly stay with Vice President Harris. But Donald Trump has went in there. He racked up some endorsements. Some mayors in that county certainly have endorsed his campaign. But it's really been a problem for the Democrats. It's similar to what Hubert Humphrey had in 1968 in the Vietnam War. He just could not bring out a lot of those anti-Vietnam War protesters to the Democratic side. This time around, Vice President Harris has had the same, very similar problem, trying to tell them that she's a little bit different from Joe Biden, and that she would favor some sort of a ceasefire. But certainly, you can see in the numbers that she's not doing as well as Joe Biden pre-Israel Gaza war.
All right, very good. Rich Rubino, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. We're going to continue on covering all of the latest, but we do want to take a little bit of a break because we're monitoring all of these shots. But thanks you again. All right, let's give you some looks at what we're following here on Live Now from Fox of all of these states, of some of these hotly contested battleground states. In Georgia, I want to put up this post here as Donald Trump there at a lead almost over 2 points at this moment, 16 very critical electoral votes. In Pennsylvania, it is even tighter there, 19 electoral votes. Trump, though, in the lead at this point. So we're following the latest with that, as well as a key Senate seat in Pennsylvania up for grabs right now. Dave McCormick does lead that by just 1 percentage point. And we could be hearing from Dave McCormick here in a matter of moments. You can see the crowd somewhat get riled up at this stage there in Pennsylvania. So we'll take you out to this as soon as it happens here on Live Now from Fox. But we're also seeing movement right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the watch party for former President Donald Trump. We see someone on the stage. We don't know if they're setting up the microphone, getting everything. The stage is set. Camera phones are out at this point. But we're following the latest here well past midnight now, 40 minutes past the midnight here on Live Now from Fox for this. All right, let's slide away, continue here. Let me put up this before we go to break, just a new post from Jackie Heinrich, new reporting here saying 2 sources tell Jackie Heinrich close to the campaign say Harris will not address the crowd at Howard tonight. Cedric Richmond will come out and give remarks. Harris is expected to speak tomorrow, and you can imagine the crowd there at Howard University disappointed by this. You can see maybe some of them learning this news, hearing some about this, and potentially leaving for the night to see Harris tomorrow. The enthusiasm going off as is past midnight there. So plenty of people still waiting here on this election night. Let's line away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get out to more top headlines. Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. We're learning that no Kamala Harris tonight at that podium at Howard University. Instead, it will be Cedric Richmond there, the co-chair of the Harris campaign. Let's listen in to what he has to say here on Live Now from Fox on election night.
But you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow
to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
All right, a quick speech there from Cedric Richmond, the Harris campaign co-chair, saying Kamala Harris will not come out tonight, encouraging people to return tomorrow to Howard University, her alma mater, to see her. And you can see the crowds filtering out very, very quickly after this, well past midnight, 12:45 on the East Coast, as the crowds are dispersing. A disappointing night not to see the vice president there addressing the crowd, as we're still learning the route to 270 in place. We're also monitoring this live picture right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, at Mar-a-Lago, as West Palm Beach, where former President Donald Trump is in attendance. You can see plenty of camera phones out right now. I don't know if anyone will step to the podium here in just a matter of moments, but the mic check is going to be in place. But let's just continue to give you a roundup of what we're learning as some of the battleground states already called, that one being North Carolina, called a check mark next to his name for the former President Donald Trump. We have not heard other checks being placed in yet, but Trump expected to speak to supporters, to the crowd gathered. You just see the amount of enthusiasm on the ground there at this watch party. Almost 1 o'clock in the morning. He was in Grand Rapids about 24 hours ago exactly at the final campaign stop of this. Of course, he is at the West Palm Beach Convention Center there. Plenty of people in attendance for this just down the road from Mar-a-Lago. So the excitement there is interesting, the contrast to what's going on right now on election night at West Palm Beach to what is going on at Howard University. Just wanted to give you a contrast of what we're looking at right there, right now. All right, let's bring into the conversation one more time Rich Rubino, as we could be here for Trump in just a second, but we did hear there from Cedric Richmond at Howard University. Rich, this is obviously not what they wanted to hear from Howard University. How unusual is it to not hear from one of the presidential candidates on election night, and what do we make of that recent speech?
It's very rare. What the kind of inside baseball one going on is, I don't know. I think there's certainly precedent for that. For example, this is an interesting one. But back in 1976, when Gerald Ford lost, he literally lost his voice from all the campaigning, and Betty Ford had to read the concession speech. But I think it's very interesting. They obviously they're probably strategizing behind the scenes. They don't know exactly what they're going to say.